Okay, so we're now recording, and those of you who are going to want a copy of this video, we'll work it out. It's going to be on my computer, so I should be able to get it uploaded to something somewhere somehow. We'll figure it out. I'm going to let people in. Does anybody have any questions before I let anyone in?
Are you going to post the
the roster? Let's see here. Thank you. It really is so good to see you all. I'm so glad you're all here.
Mike, what's your cat's name?
Oh, Xena. Xena, is she? Do you see her?
I don't see her.
Don't see her right now. No.
But
Yeah.
That makes sense. She's a trained warrior.
And that's May, which I think everybody knows at this point. That's May.
Xena is she's more princess than warrior. And she's also and really she's more worrier than warrior. She's an anxious cat. But I love her, she's been good to me. She's been very helpful. She does laundry, so that helps.
Thank you so much for doing this, Mike. Thank you.
My pleasure. Really, truly my pleasure. We got 13 people waiting in the lobby. So now that I've posted the roster, if anyone has any final questions, let me know. You can always also.
I'm doing this on a phone, so I'm trying to find the roster. So hold
on. So just go ahead and put your. Am I missing anyone that should be in the room right now? I don't think I am. Oh no. Okay. Let's see. Just double checking. See if anyone should be in here for this, but I think we got everyone.
Aaron, I'm so glad you're doing that poem at the
end. Who now?
Karen's doing the thing about hawks.
Oh yeah.
That poem. We'll see if I can do it.
And it's lovely too because essentially it'll help sort of close out the evening too. All right, are we ready? Do we want to let everyone in? All right, folks, we're getting it going. Let's
go.
Admitting them all, and because I don't want them to hear this.
As they come in, let's applaud.
Yeah, let's just keep up. Let's just be clapping. All right, we're letting them in. They're coming in, folks.
Welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
That was such a good show.
My.
Such a delightful show.
So good. That was so good.
Everybody. Welcome.
I had such a good time tonight, folks. I got to say.
Thanks for coming.
I just want to thank
We got to do this
everyone.
again. We got to do this again.
We really do.
That was a great show. That was wonderful. I had so much fun. That was a
nice
great
to
show.
see everybody.
So don't forget, folks. Pick up this book, and we'll see you all next time. Good night.
Yeah, thank you so much.
In all seriousness, welcome to the Jack McCarthy book launch for his book "Allow the Light: The Lost Poems of Jack McCarthy." Tonight we are here to celebrate a man that everyone who is reading tonight loved and adored. And I know that a number of you probably also feel that's the same way. You loved and or adored Jack McCarthy. I really tried to grab a real handful, a real solid, reliable, pugnacious, serendipitous handful of people to read some of Jack's pieces, people in the areas that he lived in. Last night we had his East Coast book launch. I noticed we have Mongo in the room. He was part of that reading last night. He did an incredible job and has been doing an incredible job of making sure that Jack's legacy keeps going and through the ages. We also have Carol McCarthy in the room tonight. And I think I say right now, the most important thing that I can do is introduce Jessica Lohafer, who is responsible for spending the last 64 years putting this book together. 64, no, really sometime around probably 2012 or so is the first time I heard about the idea of even maybe putting something like this together, and she's been working on it ever since. And it wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for her legwork. So please, if everyone could, give a warm round of applause and welcome Jessica Lohafer from Bellingham, Washington.
Excuse me. Thank you, everybody. It is so amazing to see all of your beautiful, shining faces. I'm really grateful that, Mike, you were able to put these readings together so that we could still come together, even though we can't actually be, in the same place, unfortunately, right now. We still get to share Jack's work, and I just think that that's amazing. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I made the book, because I have worked on it for like 5 years now. And one thing I wanted to say that was so special last night that I hadn't thought about until the reading was going is that when I was working on this, so much of it was by myself, actually in this room, in this office, at this table. And I didn't get to hear the poems out loud, right? I was just sort of like remembering them, or like imagining how Jack would have read them, and hearing his poetry out loud again last night for the first time in however many years it was like a balm. It was so healing. We've said this a couple of times. I've seen this a couple places, but I really feel like this is the book that we really need right now in this incredibly difficult moment. And it doesn't surprise me that Jack would give us something like this exactly when we need it, because Lord knows he had incredible timing. Just a couple of stories. And then I actually want to talk to Carol McCarthy very much if she wants to talk to me. But one story that I just wanted to share because it was so serendipitous. When I was almost done with the collection, I was at the stage that a lot of other writers are probably familiar with, where you've printed off every single poem and you are laying them all out on every surface in your kitchen or living room, and you're putting the order together. I had them all set out. I was alone in my house because my husband and my brother-in-law had gone on a trip, and I put on some Willie Nelson and I started to assemble the book. And I placed the very last poem in the collection in its spot as the last note of Willie Nelson singing Amazing Grace live ended. And I just kind of set the book down and I was like, okay, Jack, it's a little heavy-handed. Like I was a little too perfect. And there were so many moments like that through this. I was saying last night too, that sometimes when I would see a poem that almost made the cut but didn't quite make the cut, I would set it to the side and be like, I know you want it in there, Jack, and it's not going in there, so you need to get off my back about it. Like I just felt like we were kind of talking while we were working on this, and it's just been such an incredible honor. I loved Jack so much, just like we all loved Jack so much. I miss him so much, and I just feel incredibly grateful that we get to read a little bit more of what he had for us now. So thank you. And thank you, Jack. Now, if she's up for it, I would like to introduce to all of you fabulous people, the one, the only, the woman who drove Jack McCarthy to poetry, as we all know, Ms. Carol McCarthy. Hello, Carol. Welcome.
Hello, Jessica and everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. It's a miracle. It really is that we can, it'll be 8 years that he's been gone in January, and here we are. And we're thinking about him. Everything is happening to give that book that he wanted so much. He thought he would live long enough to get those poems published. And that just thrills me so much. And I think I remember when Jessica and I got together at her mother-in-law's house, and we had the poems out in big notebooks, his manuscripts in these giant white notebooks. And Jessica was picking poems and reading them out loud, and she was sorting them. And we were commenting on the poems. I thought, how will this ever get into a book? How will we choose? So Jessica, it really, hats off to you. You made it happen. And all the people that made it happen. And I was telling Jessica, and it was in actually the Boston Globe obituary, that Jack talked about if he believed in
Oh no, I think we might have lost Carol.
Yeah, it does happen. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. So hopefully we'll just keep moving along. And then if and when Carol comes back, we'll ask her questions again. If you get locked out, folks, if for whatever reason you get booted from Zoom, you might want to consider some of your life decisions. You know, that's probably karma, honestly. If you can't get in, you're having a hard time, message me, mightymikemcgee@gmail.com. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Hang on to that email address because it will, you'll be entered into a contest to win a high five from me someday in person. There is my email address in the chat. If for whatever reason you get booted out, email me. We'll figure it out. I'll get you back in. Without any further ado, what I would like to do is until we get Carol back or we get things rolling, I'm going to read to you what I read.
I'm right here.
Oh, we got Carol back.
I am here.
Oh,
there you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there I am. Okay, so anyway, he said if I was ever reincarnated, I would not want to ever have another life, he said, because this is the best life that I could ever imagine. Nothing will ever compare to it. And I think every wife would love to have a husband say that, and to have a person wake up every morning with a smile. And he just had so many wonderful friends, and it's all because of his great fans and the poets, his family, his friends, that he did what he did in his life. And he never knew that he was going to get in the Dartmouth archives. Wes Mongo helped with that. And he never knew that he would have this program tonight, you know, and that he just, well, I'm just thrilled. I can't even summarize what happened to him. We started off just as a married couple. We never knew our life was going to turn out the way it did. So thank you, everybody, and have a great show tonight.
Thank you so much, Carol. And I'm so glad you're here. It really is an honor to have you here, truly. Jessica, was there anything else that you would like to add to the evening?
I'm trying to think. I wanted to echo what Carol said. So many people have helped us with this. Mike organizing all of these events and helping us promote. Right Bloody for publishing the book. Derek, obviously we couldn't do it without you. The fundraisers that helped us, Jody Knowles, Danny Sherrard, everyone that contributed, all of the contributing authors. I mean, we really, really couldn't have done it with every single person's help. And it was so amazing to see his community come together. And I wasn't at all surprised because Jack was amazing at making an amazing community. So, you know, no shock there. But I think that's it. Just thank you to everybody. Oh, and we'll put this in the chat. I know, Carol, you wanted to make sure people knew that Jack's website is still up and running and has all kinds of great content on it, books, poems, everything. And that's standuppoet.net with 1 P because Jack is tricky and he just wanted the one. So we'll put that in the chat, but definitely check it out. It's a lovely, lovely website.
He was conserving letters, I think.
And Jessica, just so they know, I was just going to say that I have different names that will go into the website, like standuppoet.com will go in, and jackmccarthypoet.com. So really, you can find it pretty easily. And in there, you can see all his other books. EM Press deserves to be also acknowledged. They still have his books on. There's 2 books, and they have a CD, and it's all on the website. So we're so lucky to have so many books out there. And also, I can't forget Drunks and Other Poems of Recovery that Derek helped Jack produce. And Jack never saw the real book, but he saw a picture of it. And as soon as he died, that book was there. And thank you so much, Derek, for having that happen.
My absolute honor, Carol. I'm so glad that you trusted us to launch this. I'm glad I got to know him as a guy that was so damn warm, and every time I offered to get him a beer, he was so graceful about saying, dude, have you heard any of my poems? And I was like, I always forget. It's so good to see you again. My pleasure to launch this collection for real.
Thank you, Derek.
So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to give make some noise for Derek, Jessica, and Carol for a lot of the same reasons and a few different ones. But I'm going to mute everyone, and we're all going to clap and we're going to cheer for the three of them because they deserve it. So you are now all unmuted. You should be.
Nope, but that's okay.
Takes a little while.
Oh, I have one more. I'm sorry. I almost forgot someone that has to be mentioned. Absolutely, 100%. Wes Mongo Jolly. I know you're on here. You're down there. Wes was the most amazing final editor of this book. I basically gave him the manuscript. I was so sure it was done. It had a different title. It was a different looking thing. And Wes Mongo Jolly just so gracefully took it and took this unformed lump of clay and turned it into the absolutely gorgeous book that we have now. So I definitely want to give it up for him because you did so much for us. So thank you.
Okay, and can I say one thing about Wes real quick? And maybe, Wes, if you say it out loud, we can put it up there so I get it right. I don't know if it's a .ca or .com, but Wes, if you're a writer out there, Wes is the best editor I've worked with in a long time. And the notes are super detailed. We use them for as many books as possible. He does it for anyone out there for an awesome price. So wesmongojolly.com if you want to get your stuff sweetened up.
And I'll say this too, is that you could send him your manuscript and he's probably already a fan of yours. Wes,
as I'm looking at the different names on my screen, I think I'm a fan of pretty much most of the people in this chat. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah. Wes was also the host, the longtime host of the Indie Feed Performance Poetry Podcast for many years. So if you ever listened to Indie Feed, you were listening to Wes gush about poets and poetry. I don't know that there is a lover of poetry with a heart larger than Mongo's. It's a Mongo heart is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Much love to you, Wes. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
So, without any further ado, I would like to begin the evening off. One of the things that I enjoyed with Jack in all the times I got to spend with him was the just sort of his quiet irreverence. He was so willing to make a joke, but it was always very subtle and surprisingly like a little, not necessarily always the most family-friendly joke either. It was sort of surprising how much he enjoyed irreverent humor. So at his memorial on the West Coast, up in Washington, in February 16th, 2013, I read this as memorial. I think I wrote it on a paper plate because there was nothing else around me in order to jot it down. I think I wrote this on the way to his memorial. I knew Jim really well. I taught him lots of what he knowed about grammar of. We met outside of the Seattle Poetry Slam in 2003 or 4. His first words to me were, "McGee, huh? Sounds Hawaiian." I'm Hawaiian, little island just west of Boston. The one time I beat him in a slam, he congratulated my victory with a phrase that rhymed with "Whoa, chuck a shelf." I'll tell you, my good friend Joe McFeely was a hell of a poet, a man of his word, and that word was all nude burlesque. We became fast friends. He was always there for a fee. One of my fondest memories of Jake was just after we'd performed at Carol's school, and he offered to buy me lunch at Sherry's Diner. Now, some of the finest spoken word I ever saw was watching him haggle with the manager in an attempt to convince him that I, too, was a senior citizen. After lunch, we sat in his car, and he told me stories of his youth Then he put on one of his favorite CDs and proceeded to lip sync to Baby Got Back word for word. He was okay for an old guy, nearly average. I miss you, Jerry. Send postcards.
Aww.
That's for Jack. I mean, you know, I miss the guy very, very much. But I'm also kind of glad that he doesn't have to see where we're at right now. Like, you know, it feels better knowing that he doesn't have to go through this with us in a strange way. But without any further ado, so what I will do is I will say the person who's going to read next, I will announce them second, and I will say who's on deck first. So if I'm going to read next, I would say Jessica's on deck. Coming up now is Mike McGee, and then I would read, and then Jessica would follow me. So poets, be ready for hearing your name on deck. We have a really lovely lineup tonight. I am so proud of everyone who's reading with us, and I'm so glad to know all of the folks that are going to be reading with us this evening, all scattered throughout the Pacific Northwest, except for Ryler, who is in the upper Midwest, right? You're in the Northern Plains now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we'll talk about that when it comes to your turn. But Ryler is originally from Bellingham, Washington, and has a rightful place there. I think there's a plaque at Lobster Manor somewhere with your name on it, probably. So, actually, who is first? I can't remember now. I'm drawing a blank. I think it's, I'm going over to the roster right now. On deck is Ryler Dustin. But zooming in with us tonight from Vancouver, BC, he works in radio, he works in poetry. He's one of my favorite spoken word artists of all time. He's one of my dearest friends. I love him very much. I didn't understand him the first time I ever heard him do poetry. I thought he was a weirdo. I thought he was too odd, and it would never work. And then one day at work, I think this is the best bio I can give him. One day I'm at work, and I'm making copies in a little copy room by myself, and I have headphones on, and I decided I was going to play his CD on my Discman while working. 2002, I think this was. And after listening to it for the 5th time, the whole album for the 5th time during my workday, I was weeping at the copier listening to his poems. And I got it. I finally got it. And I was like, this bastard is amazing. I totally get what he's trying to do, and I love him for it. Folks, it's a great dude. Please put your hands together for R.C. Wislowski.
Thank you very much, Michael. I remember being in that copy room with you and making you cry.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't listening to the CD. It was some other things in the dark that were happening. So,
well, the poems weren't making me cry. It was you stabbing me with your switchblade.
Yeah.
I think it just hurt more than I expected. So.
I'm glad you healed, though.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Lovely. And not healed enough, I guess, to ask me to be a part of this. So
yeah.
I appreciate it.
Your poems healed me.
Yeah.
You weirdo.
And if anybody is interested, I interviewed Mike a couple of weeks ago, but the interview ran yesterday on Co-op Radio, promoting these readings, the one from yesterday, tonight, and tomorrow. And if anybody wants to go take a listen to that, they can. You just go to the archives at coopradio.org and click on Wax Poetic is the show. And the date was the 14th of October yesterday, so you can go check it out there. And Mike shared a couple of his poems and talked about Jack and talked about the readings and the book and all that stuff. So yeah, if you want to check that out, feel free, coopradio.org. I'm going to read the poem Memory. And as I was just thinking about that, I was thinking the first time I remember hearing and seeing Jack was in 1999 in Chicago at the National Poetry Slam. And I think it was it was either team semifinals, and they then had the individuals come up to compete to see who would make finals, or it was the indie finals and something like that. But anyway, seeing Jack read there and the room, you know, quiet, totally paying attention, had them hooked from the very first time. And I think it was Careful What You Wish For that he read. And I think he reads that every time. Yeah, so that was the first time. And I think the last time Sean McGarrigle was the Slam Master in Vancouver at the time, and he invited Jack up to come read, and Jack still had his oxygen tank, and came up and managed to make it, you know, across the border and everything. That was a really special moment too, and I think there was a standing ovation at the end of it. Duncan might have been there at that time too. So those are just two memories of Jack that come to mind as I do this poem, Memory. Young people seem to think we elderly should remember things simply because they happened recently and we were there. We're much more selective than that. To win a place in our memories, an item must pass triage. First, it can't be technical. Not because we're not technical, but because we understand that technical things change faster than we can memorize. The day you need to use a technical fact, you're going to have to look it up anyway, because it's probably migrated or being enhanced or upgraded since last you encountered it. Same with phone numbers. People are transient. Sooner or later, they move or divorce or die. Phone numbers are for appointment books, not memory banks. And anything that fits in an appointment book is automatically disqualified. Commercials for luxury cars, no matter how enticing, never make the cut. But the wood chipper scene in Fargo, that will stay with me. Most of the great poems in the anthologies on my bookshelves, there if I ever need them, but a nervous, severe young woman whom no one has seen before penetrates our open mic and launches a stunning, funny poem about the number 23. And I think, this happened, and I was here. And in this instance, it is enough. What about beauty? Sometimes I catch myself thinking, who is this woman who seems so happy to see me? I've never known anyone so gorgeous. I've trained myself to say at those moments, if I'm in Rhode Island, hello, Allison. Portland, hello, Ruth, because they're too much for my memory to hold. Sunsets. One evening I was driving up to the PCH to a gig in Laguna Beach, while on my left, the sun was lowering itself into the Pacific slowly, the way my wife immerses if the water is at all cold. And all the way I'm thinking, remember this, you've never seen anything quite this spectacular. More recently, driving northwest on I-5 to Bellingham, it was as if I wasn't simply observing the sunset, I was inhabiting it. But while I can itemize those two for you, I cannot reconstruct them, even for the eye within my mind. All I remember is the fact of them. So while it's tempting to think great beauty should win a place on merit alone, and God knows I do love sunsets, there's something generic about them. If I ever forget every beautiful sunset I have ever seen, no tragedy. There'll be another one along tomorrow, and I can view it with fresh eyes, and it will dazzle me all over again. No, great beauty isn't sufficient. Commandeers too many pixels, and my mind has limited RAM, password protected. It takes something extraordinary to wedge open a place there. What about love then? Great sex can be memorable. A particularly unique motion, as when someone moves under you like a great eel impaled belly down on a wooden deck, finally realizing that her only hope of release lies in sliding up the shaft. When someone rises like that, desperate again and again to meet you, you'll remember for the rest of your life. But love, if you're lucky, is like a sunset. Generic, diurnal, however impossibly beautiful, as constant and as unremarked as the drums in the background of a rock anthem. Sure, you remember the bass drum and a cathedral effect at the beginning of Be My Baby and Born to Run, but David Bowie sings changes, and you know there had to be a drum in there somewhere. But have you any memory of it? If you don't remember love, don't fault yourself. There's more tomorrow, and you'll have fresh eyes to see it, and it will flabbergast you all over again, just like it did the first time.
Yeah.
Jack McCarthy, Memory.
Wow. Did Jack write it?
Good choice. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, RC.
You're
That was
welcome.
fantastic. How are you, RC?
I'm pretty good, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, I'm here. You want to be on? My partner, Nicole. She's
Hi,
here
Nicole.
listening in. Everyone say hi to Nicole if you want.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
I'm flabbergasted at how many people I've met on Zoom. You know, like where like there are people who I like have a pretty solid relationship with now via Zoom. You know, I've never met in person. You know, and I feel like it's the new, it's like pen pals, like video pals. You know.
Yeah.
So odd. But I love you, RC, and I thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm glad to be here.
On deck is Jody Knowles. But coming up right now, Ryler Dustin is the author of the poetry collection Heavy Lead Birdsong from Ripe Bloody Publishing and the chapbook The Lantern Sea from Destructible Heart Press. A two-time member of the Seattle Slam team, he has placed 8th in the individual World Poetry Slam and headlined at spoken word venues across the United States. A native of Bellingham, Washington, he holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of Houston and a PhD from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He has received residencies from the Jack Kerouac Project of Orlando and the Marjorie Davis Boyden Wilderness Writing Residency. It is my great pleasure to introduce you, everyone, to Dr. Ryler Dustin. Ryler!
Oh, hello, everyone. It's so delightful to see all of your faces. I'm resisting the urge to just have 8 or 9 private chat conversations right now with all of you. This is a very short essay called Grace Notes. The first time I saw Jack McCarthy, I was in line at Stewart's Coffee House, then a haven for Bellingham artists, bohemians, students, loners, and poets. At the time, I didn't know what the word poet meant. I didn't know much of anything. I knew I needed to write for some reason beyond my control, but I didn't know what to write, or why, or even how to begin. All I knew with certainty was that I needed coffee. That's when Jack took the stage. I had stumbled into some kind of open mic, and the audience, mostly 20-somethings like myself, hollered at the aging man's approach. I expected an amazing magic trick or a musical performance, but the man had no instrument. Perhaps he would sing. I could not have been more surprised when he opened his mouth. He was speaking, not singing, not even orating, but speaking, the way one speaks to a longtime friend. And the audience couldn't take their eyes off him. I guzzled my coffee and leaned closer. He was talking about addiction. I stopped drinking only when it hurt too much to drink. I stopped smoking when it interfered with jogging. I stopped jogging when the pain in my hips started waking me up at night. For ice cream, which had to go when my cholesterol reached escape velocity. I realized suddenly why my peers were so rapt. We were the generation of sound bites, weaned on MTV. But this soft-spoken, lanky man at the microphone had tapped into something profound, our need to hear honest speech. Sitting at Stewart's months later, after I'd begun to read and write and listen to and practically live on poetry, I noticed Jack's table was littered with note cards, each filled with observations about the poems read that night. I noticed my own name among them. He'd been taking notes on us, I realized, on every single poet. When talking about the loss of Jack, it's tempting to bewail the stunning inadequacy of words. But I can hear Jack's voice in my head. Stick to concrete images, Ryler. Don't get weepy. Remember to make them laugh before you make them cry. So instead, I will say that shortly before he passed, Jack requested that I bring him bacon-topped donuts. As I brought them, I thought about that first poem, the one about addiction, in which he gleefully describes giving a personification of bad health a run for his money. And I thought about the way that poem ends. And maybe that's how it was supposed to be, arcade of substances that seem to ease the pain, but all you're playing is whack-a-mole. You bash it here, it pops up there, till suddenly you stumble on the substance of your destiny and understand at last that all the pain you ever gave the slip was the pain of not doing this. Jack's absence in the lives he touched will never ease up. But as Jack would say, life isn't supposed to be easy. It's only supposed to be worth it. After Jack said goodbye to my friends and me, he invited us to raid his bookshelf. I found the first poetry I ever published, a staple-bound homemade chapbook. Inside were Jack's copious notes, grammatical corrections, even somewhat unscrupulous criticisms, and poem ratings. I couldn't help but laugh. Jack wrote so well and touched so many lives because he understood how to value the words of others, to give them his full attention. He taught us that writing well isn't about how much you say, it's about how well you listen. We are going to miss his words, but the quality of his attention is what we can't find by opening his books or playing his albums. The sound of his pen on cardstock, the real writer's secret, the writer who can listen, is among the most profound poems I'll carry with me. Those were Jack's grace notes.
Gosh, I love you, Ryler.
Whatever, Ryler. Get out of here.
Hey, don't listen to Brian. You stay here. Brian, you get out of here. You don't go nowhere, Ryler. That was great.
Nice job, Ryler.
Thank you.
Also like to point out
That was fantastic.
Nice job.
I would like to point out too that there's a poem in here that you inspired that Jack wrote. Right? There's
Oh yeah.
It's I think it was inspired by one of the lines of your poem. Yeah. A poem in 4 parts, ending with the slightly altered first line of a Ryler Dustin poem. Jack adored you. He really did. And I know this because I got a call from him one day. We actually might have been it might have been in person. I think I might have been on tour, and he says, "Hey, are you heading over to the individual World Poetry Slam?" It was in Charlotte that year. What year was that, Ryler?
Oh man,
2006? Was that the year I met you?
I think that's about right.
And Jack pulls me aside and he goes, "There's a kid out there. He's heading out. He's really new to the scene, and he hasn't done a whole lot of live stuff yet, but he's good. He's real good. And can you just keep an eye on him?" And I was like, "Sure, no problem." I was like, "I'm gonna be wasted, so it's gonna be hard for me. He's gonna have to keep an eye on me." So, but I came up and introduced myself to you because Jack told me to. And I've regretted it ever since. So we became fast friends, and I miss you. I miss seeing you. I miss being around you. Mostly your scent. You know, there's something about it. It's very musky. You know, very nice.
Yeah,
very nice. Like cedar meets an elk. It's weird.
It's only gotten muskier out here in Michigan.
Yeah, I was about to ask.
It's-
I was pretty sure you were in a state that began with the letter M, but I couldn't remember which one it was. And they're all pretty much
the one that has
pushed together.
the famous governor that he's protecting right now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Where
I'm
in
knocking
Michigan?
on doors like in 2 days for Biden, and I'm like, all my friends are like, can you check in every hour?
Yeah.
Make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
Where in Michigan are you, Ryler?
I'm in Lansing, which is like right in the middle of the glove of Michigan.
Is that the capital? Is Lansing the capital?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Wow, you're very well informed. I feel like I learned that like 2 months after I moved here.
It's one of the few. It's one of the many capitals I performed in in my touring days. So, yeah, but I like Michigan. Really, it's an interesting place. It's a very interesting place.
Yeah, I like it too.
So I'm going to move on. Ryler, thank you so much. I'm really glad you're here. And I
Love you, Mike.
do miss you. Email me your address and I want to send you some postcards.
Okay.
I would really, really like that. On deck now is Duncan Shields. But right now, Jody Knowles is a performance artist, writer, poet, public speaker, educator, and director whom critics have called intuitively brilliant. Jody has performed in numerous award-winning independent films, theatrical productions, and festivals. She began writing in 2005 and stumbled upon the Seattle Poetry Slam, where she quickly fell in love with the art form of spoken word poetry. She began performing, teaching as a solo artist throughout the West Coast. She wrote and performed a one-woman show, Learning Curve, in 2017 to 2020 to audiences as large as 2,000 plus. She used her show as an artful conversation starter to start powerful dialogue that explores the school-to-prison pipeline, ACEs, learning differences, and bring awareness to the segregation of creative minds in the American public school system. She created the Luminous Minds Project to change the narrative of mental health, learning differences, and hidden wounds while providing SEL education, support, and advocacy to the community to better understand the healing, recovery, and creative learning process. Folks, one of the best people I've ever known. Please welcome Jody Knowles.
Hey guys, oh my gosh. I have all of my tissues. I will cry. I'm not ashamed of that. Jack taught me how to cry in public and without shame. And I think that's a gift that he gave me. Thank you so much, Jessica, for doing this. When you told me that you were going to take this on, I was like really blown away, because when we moved him from Marysville to Lake City, I saw the binders of all his poems and how he organized them, and it's just a feat in itself. And so thank you for bringing me onto this project. It's been amazing to watch. And Carol McCarthy, thank you for always texting at like the most auspicious times. When I'm down in the depths, feeling my feelings, you would pop in with a Jackism and tell me how much you loved me, and kept going and keep boosting me a little bit more in my writing and my performing. And to McGee for always saying yes to curating conversations around Jack, keeping his invitational going. It's been amazing to watch this all go on for 7 years now. And Write Bloody too, doing an amazing job of preserving the writings of Jack McCarthy, not only his poetry, but the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's a lot of ways to fuck that up. And I feel like when I was going through the book, it really captured what the message of Jack in the rooms, and I was really lucky to know Jack on stage, off stage, and in the rooms, and I hit my bottom while I was poeting, and a lot of people here saw it, but he had a solution, and he called me knowing that I hit bottom, and he met me up in Arlington to have a cup of coffee, and he said, come meet my friends. And I went and I met his friends in a basement in a church, and there was a bunch of old people in their 80s, and I cried for probably my first year, and the old guys would just come over with box of tissues and just give them to me, and I'm just like, I can't believe this is not my brand, And so what Jack had did for me in my first year of sobriety was every time I tried to learn how to poet without a drink, he would come and read drunks at open mics. And I'm shaking and freaking out, and he wouldn't slam that night. He would just be there and watch and hold space for me, and he would have a drink of Sprite sitting on the table for me. And he went from Bellingham to Portland to Spokane, you know, to come and do that for me. To do poetry sober is a challenge. And he did it for 5 years, and he ended up passing on my sober birthday at 5 years of sobriety. And so he has impeccable timing. And so when I was asked to write something for Jack, there's just so many stories. And I wanted to really encapsulate what I saw in him, because I was really judgmental when I saw him. I was like, what is this old guy doing? So here's my poem that I put in there.
I don't know.
Well, these kids, he's probably like 40.
I'm 42. The very first time I saw Jack McCarthy was in 2005 at the Miraboo Room in Lower Queen Anne in Seattle, Washington. The room was mysteriously dark with glowing red stage lights and loud bass thumping out 90s hip-hop music. Then there was Jack, sitting at a small round table by himself, just him, a flickering candle, a to-go coffee mug, and a green backpack by his side. He was slouched over, reading and taking notes on small index cards. My first thought was, why is he here? It's far past his bedtime. I had never seen an old man out that late. And when Jack McCarthy's name was called to slam, the crowd erupted, cheering his name. And I got nervous as he took the stage, scared he might fall over or fall asleep standing up. But when he approached the mic, the room fell silent like a calm lake. I could feel history and a sense I was witnessing something historic. When he spoke, the kids in the room straightened their backs, ears perked like butterfly nets, waiting to catch his metaphors and life lessons. His age, class, race disappeared. It was like watching the movie Cocoon. He told the story of a hawk and a long car ride he took with his young daughters. He moved with grace without arthritis pain, and he was free. Arms spread out like an eagle, and I knew he was meant for this. And when he was done, the story hung like warm sunlight only spirits and grace can create. Jack McCarthy became much more than a slam poet to me, and I was honored to call him my dear friend. I began to always look for him, watching how he navigated spaces gently and how he studied each of us, making everyone feel so seen. Jack was a true friend, a humble poet, and a grateful legend, and I've come to accept there will never be another living poet like him. The poem that I was asked to, when they asked me to read a poem, thanks. You know, there's just so much that he's written, you know, and I really wanted to talk about his recovery because I think that's what really sets him apart from the pack, is that, you know, he didn't just acquire time in sobriety, he had quality time, and he had emotional sobriety. And I think that's the difference between, that's what you're feeling when you're with Jack. And so when I saw this poem, I knew this is the nugget of what made Jack Jack. And without Alcoholics Anonymous, there would be no Jack McCarthy. You know, he's an ACE kid. He's from an adverse childhood experience. When he lost his parents and then went into Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, he really struggled, you know, trying to find his sobriety and finding his voice. And now it's just, anyways, I'm just gonna read. This is called Poster Boy. My mother was killed in a car accident when I was 17, and my father died 6 months later of a broken heart. And I wasted no time becoming an alcoholic. 5 years later, I was in recovery from the alcoholism, devoting all of my attention to healing that. And it was as if the other wound was cauterized with the white-hot branding iron of the AA. And in the years that followed, I knew that beneath the scar of that searing, there was business that I needed to do, that I would never be whole unless I opened up that again. But if I wasn't whole, I was functional. And if I let those demons out, I was sure they wouldn't take me over. So I settled. And you would think the story wouldn't have a happy ending, but surprise. Now I believe slow healing can happen from the outside in. And for that principle, I am the poster boy. The only downside is it took me 40 years to get here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. It's so good to see you.
I love you.
I love you too. It's funny too because I think
Wonderful, Jody.
When did I see you last? Was that January? I think it was January. I was up briefly and we met at a cafe. And it feels like a whole decade ago now.
Yeah.
Because that was the last time I left San Jose. Was in January. That's the last time I left. Now, granted, I'm lucky because there's 1 million people here, and the city is, half the size of Chicago. So there's plenty of places to go within San Jose. But gosh, I miss the Pacific Northwest dearly.
We miss.
I can't wait. No, that's so. I was supposed to actually fly down to Southern California in April or May and do some shows with Derek Brown, and I had to cancel that flight. And so I still have Alaska Airlines ticket waiting for me for when I can actually fly again someday. And the goal is to forego ever going back to LA and heading up to the Pacific Northwest. And basically the goal will be to land in Portland and then just walk to every city till I get to Vancouver. Basically, because fuck it, why not? And I'll just have books. I'll just pass out books,
Have your own library.
Yeah, books and hugs. I'll be Johnny Apple Book, Johnny Book Dog, Johnny, I don't know. Jody, I love you. Thank you so much. Let's see. On deck, we now have Jessica Lohafer on deck. But right now, Duncan Shields is a tall, bearded poet from the rainforests of Vancouver, British Columbia. He's been on a couple of Vancouver Poetry Slam teams and been a haiku champion, nerd slam champion, and slam master. He's very happy to be here. I am very happy to have him here. Duncan is probably one of the funniest living people I've ever met. One of the kindest people that I have ever met. And the fact that whenever I go to Vancouver, I get to hang out with RC and Duncan, it's a good day. It's a really fucking good day. Because I feel like they're two people who get me, I get them, and there's a reason why they're here. Because I think that they are distant cousins of an idea that is Jack McCarthy. I think there's a gentleness, a kindness, and a generosity that we really want to practice, that I feel like in Jody and Wes Mongo Jolly and Ryler Dustin and Brian Ellis, I think a lot of us have that in us, and we want to practice that. And Duncan and RC practice that on a very regular basis. Duncan, I love you. I'm glad you're here. Take it away.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Lots of love, Mike. Thank you. It's really good to see all of you so much. You don't realize how lonely you are until you come to a meeting like this and you're like, oh my God, hi, look at all these faces, hello, and you're so blown away by it. This is a story I never told anybody. It was the last time I saw Jack, RC was talking about it, and it was a slam he did up here, and he did have his oxygen tank and his cannula with him, and he did his set sitting down. And me and Sean McGarrigle were co-slam masters at the time, and I was the place was packed, right? The place was packed. Anybody was there. Old friends of his. Everybody knew this is the time. If you want to see him, this is the time. And I'd seen him perform, and I talked to him once or twice, but it was one of those things where I was just taking care of the slam. I just wanted to run the slam, make sure the slam went well, and make sure everybody got a chance to talk to Jack, because, you know, who am I? I'm just some guy. You know, he's a legend, they're legends. They can talk about their legend stuff. I'm just gonna like take care of the slam and make sure everything gets filmed and make sure everybody knows who's up next and the judges and all that and everything. And so, and also my own father had died about 2 years previous from something similar. So I think I was still a little nervous about that. So I held back. And then just as he was leaving, right? Just as he was leaving, he turned around and he was like, "Hey, Duncan, I'll see you later." And I was like, "Oh my God, he actually knows my name." I just hope he didn't feel snubbed by me or something. I hope he understood. Anyway, I shouldn't have told that story. I'm quite shaky now. But okay, here's this. It was cool when I got the invitation because I just had a night of a lot of really bad dreams, and I was like, "Oh God!" I woke up all tense, really weird dreams. You're just trapped. And Mike was like, "Do you want to be a part of this?" I'm like, "Oh sure." My God, yes. And so I had to read the whole book and pick some poems. So I was totally shattered. And then Jack put me back together with all the poems that he had written, and it was such a wonderful experience. So I narrowed it down to 15 and narrowed it down to 10 and then narrowed it down to 2 and cross-checked it with the spreadsheet to see that there was no repeats. So this is the one I ended up on, and it's a little narrative that I really liked. It's called The Ones Who Are Listening by Jack McCarthy. You talk to the ones who are listening, Jackie. That's all you can ever do. The old timers were prepping me for my first time carrying the message inside prison walls. Some of these guys come just to get out of their cells. Some for the coffee and donuts. Some on the off chance they'll get to look at a woman. Some to be with their boyfriends. But somewhere in the crowd will be a few who came to listen to us. What you do is you find those few, and they're the faces that you talk to, like nobody else was in the room. Perfect advice, as I look back for the open mic world. But the event was even worse than the expectations. Those prisoners had nothing but absolute contempt for us. They had left their cells that night only to exercise their techniques of intimidation. There were 5 of us. At any normal 90-minute meeting on the outside, one of us would have been squeezed out because 3 of the first 4 would have talked too long. That night, we had an hour to fill. But inside 20 minutes, we had all of us said our piece and retreated to the other side of the long folding table that felt like the flimsiest of barriers between us and these superbly hardened and unquestionably alpha male animals. What would happen now with 40 minutes to go? Just leave early? I was all for that. But Bobby M. got back up and started to talk again. Now, I'd heard Bobby speak a time or two, and he wasn't funny or eloquent. He was one of those guys who didn't really like speaking and make the mistake of telling the audience so up front, as if to say, I'm going to really suck, but I didn't come here to shine, just to carry the message. But if I had a tape of what Bobby said that night, I swear I'd listen to it every time I prepare to face an audience, prepare to write. He started off confronting them like, you fucking guys are so fucking smart. You know all the angles. You're real good at living in here. Now, I'm going to tell you what it's going to be like on your first day outside of here. The room went absolutely silent. With the quality of attention that follows the foreman of the jury saying, "We have, Your Honor." And we knew that Bobby M. had set off a vibration that now ran through everyone sitting on the far side of that frail folding table. You're going to walk down the street and you're going to think that everybody you pass, everyone you meet, knows exactly where you've been and why, and that you had it coming. Like you're wearing a sign that everyone can read except you. They couldn't have gotten any quieter than they already were. but they seemed then to settle deeper into stillness, to accept that they were in it for the long haul. Lincoln at Gettysburg didn't get the quality hearing that met Bobby M that night at Concord Farm. You guys think you're so fucking hard living in here? You think living in here is hard? Bullshit. For guys like us, it's outside that's hard. We get here, we're home. It's just a matter of winning a couple of fights, taking a couple of beatings, and we know exactly where we stand. Out there, we never know that. Where we stand, we're always making it up as we go along. Guys like us can't live like that. So we drink, we get drunk, and we get in trouble. Trouble is our friend. The only thing out there we ever really understood. Believe me when I tell you that first day on the street, you got just one chance. You do what I did. Get your ass to an AA meeting as fast as you can. It won't be easy. It never is. But do what they tell you, and there's just the smallest sliver of an outside chance you won't have to come back here and be with all your friends who will all be back here too. He talked for the rest of the meeting. Maybe I've rendered some sense of the content, but the experience, nothing whatsoever. To me, most of the time, words come easy. I couldn't turn that off, even if I wanted to. But they never came easy for Bobby M. But that one night, for him, every sentence fragment issued of its own volition from a dark place of muscle memory somewhere deep inside, where he'd been struggling to keep it tied down for a long, long time. Like a deathbed confession, a projectile vomiting of bedrock truth. I only remember two things about that night. The blessing of the cold wind on my face as the iron door clanged shut behind us. And the Bobby M, all the way back to Dorchester, didn't say another word. Thank you. Sounds like a very intense experience. It would have been interesting to be in the room for that and to hear Jack.
Good stuff.
You handled that so well, Duncan.
Thank you, Duncan.
Really well read.
Well done.
Thank you.
Your characterizations were a real addition to it. That I think you always nail that sort of thing, and I appreciate you for it.
For Bobby M, I was considering like an outrageous French accent, but I decided to just go.
Yeah.
For something.
Canadians usually lean on the French accent as much as they can, right? So it makes sense. My problem is that anytime I tried to do a Boston or New York accent, it never lasts for more than 10, 15 minutes. Because then the Boston slips into New York or New York slips into Boston. I can never hold it. Never, ever, ever. So, but good job, Duncan. It's good to see your face.
Yeah.
And I should put this out there too. Those of you who need something like this a little bit more often, and I don't mean, this is a bit of a shameless plug, but I do an open mic every first and third Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific. So if anybody needs that sort of thing, it's real simple. I just send you an invite to the Zoom link and on a spreadsheet, you put your name on it, which is very similar to how this got set up. So if anyone's interested, put in the chat that you would like to be invited to that event. And my email address is in the chat. I think everybody saw it in there too. So mightymikemcgee@gmail.com. Just drop me an email. I'll put you on the invite list. So without any further ado, on deck is Brian S. Ellis. But right now, Jessica Lohafer is a writer out of Bellingham, Washington, whose work has appeared in Whatcom Magazine, The Sweet Tree Review, Drunk in a Midnight Choir, Nailed Magazine, and Red Sky, poetry on the global epidemic of violence against women. Her collection of poetry, What's Left to Be Done, was published by Radical Lunchbox Press in 2009. She has served as the program director for poetry and public education, bringing writing workshops to schools throughout the Pacific Northwest, and previously hosted the Write Riot Poetry Slam. Jessica received her MFA in poetry from Western Washington University in 2014. In 2019, she and her dear friend, Caitlin Morris, created Special Lady Day, a women's history podcast. She once took second place to Jack McCarthy in an erotic poetry slam. Folks, please welcome our editor-in-chief, Jessica Lohafer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
I have a nice little addendum to the erotic poetry slam story that I lost. So one of my favorite memories of Jack McCarthy is him just ruthlessly beating me in every single poetry slam we were ever in together, always, every time. I never won. And I remember one time he had said to me, Jessica, one day you will beat me in a poetry slam, but that day is not today. So he really enjoyed it quite a bit when he would win. And when he won first place in the erotic poetry slam, we were doing a benefit for Planned Parenthood in Bellingham, and it had been sponsored. The event was sponsored by Lover's Package, a local sex shop, and they had given us prizes. And so Jack McCarthy was presented with his first place prize, which was a vibrating tongue ring. And I remember very clearly Jack looking at it for about 15 seconds, looking at me, and then saying, why don't you take this, Jessica? I don't need it. And I was like, okay. It was potentially the greatest moment I ever had with him in my life. He was hilarious. But the poem I'm going to read tonight is a poem that I did not ever hear before I found it for this book. It's called This Is a Ball. We're going to see if I cry. This is a ball. It was the girl that caught my eye. Young, blonde, shorts and a sleeveless top, barefoot on the AstroTurf tennis court. I was a little too far away to make out her face, but she had all the casual beauty of the young, a body in the wonderful no man's land between cover girl and athlete, the kind of girl who, if they have a family softball game at a wedding reception, will be too busy playing third base to try to catch the bouquet. This girl was practicing volleyball with a crew-cut young guy in baggy shorts and moccasins. He would loft the ball toward her, and she'd set it back to him in a lazy arc, and he'd spike it back, and she'd try to dig it. Sometimes she'd succeed, and he'd return it with a gentle set, and maybe she would take the opportunity to spike, or not. They weren't playing by any rules that I could figure out. The guy seemed to be teaching the girl, and my first thought was she had a crush on him, that asking him to help her learn volleyball was her way of getting him alone, the way a she-wolf tries to cut a caribou out of the herd. His back was to me, and when he spoke, a low murmur was all I heard, like pillow talk. The actual words carried away on the ocean breeze that blew from behind him and me across the island, over the water, in the general direction of Portsmouth. The girl chattered constantly, coordinated, tireless, never out of breath. From the porch where I was sitting, I could make out only an occasional phrase, but her voice had all the happiness of the first days of summer vacation in the last days of a golden adolescence before anything has gone wrong. Once, telling a little story between sets, she slipped the ball under the front of her top and looked for a few moments pregnant. Often she laughed. Once she picked up the ball and held it in front of her, arms akimbo, reminding me of our football coach's speech to us after we got humiliated in our first game. I can see we're going to have to start from scratch. Gentlemen, this is a ball. But then she broke the connection by tossing in a few dance steps that Coach would never have attempted. Across the water, over Portsmouth, the northern sun was setting slowly, as it does around the solstice, grudgingly, like a child pulling out all the stops to stave off going to bed while it's still light out. Pink behind a low-lying line of clouds, gilding the wisps that hung above the bay. A brass choir serenaded us from the porch of the hotel next door, mood indigo, a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. The boy was so patient with the girl that I changed my mind. It was he that was in love with her. Set, spike, shatter. I keep hearing the word like. The young speak in constant simile. The slow encroachment of the dark has no effect on them. I remembered playing baseball as a kid in the long, precious hours after supper, in the sweet week after school got out 2 against 2 in the big backyard, how it would grow dark so slowly that young eyes could accustom gradually, and the game would never end until some grown-up called out to us that it was pitch dark, and we'd look around, and it was true. It must have been like that for this boy and girl. Set, spike, set, spike, retrieve, chatter, like. The brass choir is now on to When I'm 64. I remember how sweet and funny and ephemeral that song seemed when it came out, how very young we all were. Now that 64 is history, the song takes on a very different set of resonances. Set, spike, retrieve, chatter, laugh. They're still going. And I admit that once again, I have to start from scratch, that I have no idea who might be in love with whom at this moment, but I'll be very surprised if it takes even a week before each is in love with each. I'm ready to stop writing now. I can hear that old voice calling, Jack, it's pitch dark out there. I can still write, I think, but no longer can I read what I have written, and still I hear the rhythms of their play. This is a ball, and they are dancing.
You did it, Jessica.
Didn't cry.
Jessica. Way
Did
to go. Good read. Good read.
Thank you.
I owe you all the woots and the woohoos for the next week. So you're amazing. I appreciate you, Jessica. I really appreciate everything you did to make this book happen.
Thank you.
And also just like your podcasts are also amazing, by the way. And you should put links to those in the chat. Okay. You really, really should. And folks, you should go and listen to those podcasts. Also, too, one of the things, a request that I would like to make of everyone, if they could, is to ask your local favorite bookstores, if you have any left, to carry this book. Just go ask them to carry this, and tell them that you will send people to that bookstore to buy this book. So if you could, please tell people to pick up this book. Who does anyone here who has a copy of it? Who already has a physical copy of it?
Here we go.
Boom.
And Booktree in Kirkland, which I own, is a small independent bookstore, has many copies of the book already for sale, along with Drunks.
And Chris, would you put a link to your bookstore in the chat?
Sure.
Or actually,
if
what is it? What is
slip around, it's just we're on Facebook. If you just do Booktree Kirkland in Facebook or do a Google search, it'll come up.
Okay, I'm putting that in the chat right now. Delightful. Okay, on deck is Chris Jarmick. But coming up right now, Brian Stephen Ellis lives in Portland, Oregon, but hails from his beloved Boston, Massachusetts. He was part of the Boston Poetry Slam for a number of years. He co-founded an internationally renowned Yes Wave think tank, the White House Family Record. He has published 4 collections of poetry through Right Bloody Publishing and University of Hell Press. Ellis has traveled to and through nearly every physical and mental state in America, breathing in the dusty experience and coughing up his unique perspective. He's a lyrical, authentic storyteller. And I had the distinct pleasure of unfolding chairs in my kitchen with Brian. I hardly knew him, but he showed up at my house early when I lived in Worcester, Massachusetts. He shows up early, and it's just me and Brian. And he drove out from Boston, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and came to perform at the kitchen session. I don't know, was that the night Jack was there? I can't remember. Were you there the night Jack was there?
I was there the night Jack was there, but I don't think that was that night.
I don't think so either. But we decided, we should go on tour together. And that conversation, little could we have known that conversation would spark one of the most engaging points of our lives. Just everything converged, everything happened. So many things.
One of the greatest friendships in history. I mean, you can.
So we joined up with a couple of other poets, Mindy Nettifee, John Sands, and we hit the road. And we all went through some pretty intense life stuff, life changes.
There were lessons.
The lessons.
Yeah.
Oh, zigzagging. What was the car? What were we in? Just so people can know.
It's Mindy's 2004 Toyota Matrix.
Toyota Matrix.
Own and drive.
Yeah. We zigzagged all over the country. 4 people in a Toyota Matrix. And now you can't get.
Mike, you should know this about Mike McGee. You get him in a car and he falls asleep immediately. Like, you're not out of the driveway and Mike is asleep.
Out like a light. I'm like a baby.
Yeah.
I'm like a baby. Just start that car and I'm like, oh, good night, everyone. Is Leno on? Oh, good night. It's funny how easy it is. But being a lifelong passenger, I've never been a driver, so I can just fall asleep. I've never had to worry about being behind the wheel. So, which is also another reason why I'm too afraid to get my license, because I feel like the moment I start that car, I'm going to be like, all right, everybody, let's go. But anyhow, I wanted to say that Brian Stephen Ellis, is one of the most noble human beings I've ever met. And I say that with all sincerity, and I mean it, because I've never seen someone with such really just pure conviction and a need to find the honesty that makes sense to him throughout in the world, in the processes of the world and people and what have you. And his connection to humanity is it's really beautiful. And I think that it's his poetry. If you ever get a chance to pick up some of Brian's books and read them, you won't regret it. A phenomenal writer, a phenomenal poet, and a dear human being. Please give a warm welcome to Brian Stephen Ellis.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's a lot. I'm already pretty close to crying, so I'm from the Blue Hills in Massachusetts. And I've spent one-on-one time with Jack, less than a dozen times maybe. We just kind of missed each other a lot. We didn't often occupy places at the same time, but it was really wild to me. I was from Needham, which is where Carol and Jack met. I started reading poetry at the Cantab. His silhouette loomed large at the Cantab, he had just moved when I started going. And the Cantab was like so important to the both of us. And then he moved to the Pacific Northwest with his wife, and I also then moved to the Pacific Northwest with my wife. So I don't know. I've just been following him around forever. And I wanted to hit you guys with this picture. This is a really good story. Let's see if I can find it. Hang on. Yeah. Okay, so here's this. Oh, am I sharing? Yeah, so here's this picture. This is a funny picture. So Jack, Artie, Jamie, and I we're all Cantab poets. Artie's actually wearing a t-shirt that says Northeast. This was in Seattle. We didn't go together. We all just happened to be there at the same time. And actually, Jack was actually kind of having a bad night. He had like read a few poems on the open mic, and he like didn't like the way it went. But it was just amazing that we were all there. Jamie was the feature, and I was just passing through on like on tour, and Artie was there, and there was one other funny person there. So we all were there, and we were like, excited about being like Cantab poets and all there in Seattle, and what a like kismet it was. And Artie, if you know Artie, he always has a camera with him. And we wanted to get a picture of the four of us, and standing just off to our side was Taylor Molly. And Jack, like, sticks out his finger, and he's like, "Hey, Taylor." And Taylor turns around, and he does, if you know Taylor, you know that face that he makes sometimes, he's like, "Yes," and he's like, and he looks at the group of us, and he's like, Taylor's like excited to join the group. And then Jack takes Artie's camera and hands it to Taylor and is like, "Can you take a picture of us?" And so that's, Taylor Molly took this photograph. He's not in the picture. It's a really great moment. It was so funny. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of inside baseball, but I just love that story, and I realized I had that picture on my computer. I don't know how to get it off. Huh. Hello?
I say just go ahead and keep it on.
Okay, great.
We can look at Jack as long as you keep your head to like sort of center. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so this poem I'm going to read of Jack's is this is a poem about the Cantab, and I'm excited to get to read it. It's called "The Music Upstairs." For years of Wednesdays, it was a soul band upstairs with a lot of blues, but there was one song you could always count on, was "Stand By Me." When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we see. One song you could count on. And we're sitting here in this dim, smoky cellar, so deep underground that moonlight seems another reality, a poetic fiction. And I have to pull myself out of this poem about angels I've been listening to think, moonlight, yes, it exists, is perhaps more real than angels, at least outside this room. Poetic fiction. Sometimes the music upstairs wins, pulls me away to the time after my marriage broke up, that I took my kids to see the movie Stand By Me, and I asked them in the car on the way home, their home, why did Ace back down against the gun? when he didn't back down on the highway. And Megan said, because he didn't want to die alone. And I knew that her answer was way better than my answer, and that something fundamental had shifted, like a tectonic plate. And from now on, my kids would understand some things that were enigma to me. Their mother, maybe. Their home, not mine. A reggae band took over upstairs, and one night I heard, by the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, oh, how we wept when we remembered Zion. When we remembered Zion. Well, I didn't actually hear those words. We can never quite make out the words down here. We only hear the music. We have to figure out what the words are. We provide the words. But River of Babylon, that's my song. I used to sing it with a folk group in church on Sunday, and for years I previewed the readings and picked out the songs. And when I saw those lines in my first reading, I made a tape of my old Boney M45, that bastard disco reggae version of the Reggae Rasta hymn. And when the folk group sings it a cappella from the altar, we can hear those thumping disco drums, and sometimes we make the people hear that other music too. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? In a strange land. And Lord knows this is a strange place where angels are as real as moonlight. But how do we sing? There are people on the outside I've known for years who know less about me than some absolute stranger who wanders in and hears me do one poem here. We don't want to die alone. Now there's a new band upstairs with a country western feel, and I'm ransacking memory to place what they're playing. Turns out to be a John Prine song, The Speed of the Sound of Loneliness. What in the world's come over you? What in heaven's name have you done? You've broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run. And it's good to know there is one other person in the world who loves that song as much as I do. It makes it, well, a little less lonely. A little less lonely. And it takes me a minute to get perspective. But I know that it is real. There is a music upstairs, and some of us can hear it. And when one of us can put words to one strain of it for the rest of us, there is a fundamental shift, How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? We sing it every time we stand up here and tell the truth about our loves and losses, brokenness and ecstasy, our tears and our fears. We sing the Rastafarian song that an unwitting Irish congregation in Neponset sings every time that reading comes around. We sing the speed of the sound of loneliness, brought to a stop for a moment out of time when just one other person says it isn't just poetic imagination. The music upstairs is real. I hear it too. I hear it too. So sing for me, my brothers and my sisters. Sing our a cappella song. And when I walk out that door, I may start running again. But in here, something in the world's come over me. And I will be afraid. And I will shed a tear. And that's how I will stand by you.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
Beautifully done.
Beautifully.
Wonderful poem. Thank you, Brian.
Brian, that was fantastic.
I don't know the name of the middle band. The first band he's talking about is Lil Joe Cook, who had one hit in the 70s and hung on to that hit like it was to his death. It was like Lil Joe Cook. And Patricia Smith has this amazing poem about Lil Joe Cook. And And then the third band he's talking about was still around in my time, and they were called the Chicken Slacks.
That's amazing.
I wanted to, tell you guys about the Chicken Slacks.
Brian, that was awesome. On a side note, when you had the computer screen on and you sort of had this blue wash over you, you kind of looked like a fallen Jedi was visiting four other Jedis behind you. Like you're like leading them, you're like, hey, I'm here to tell you you're fucking up,
Yeah, that's what I'm like generally.
Yeah. You're my favorite fallen Jedi.
Yeah.
I like George Lucas just added you to that photo again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss you, bud.
I miss you
Very
too,
much.
Mike.
It's great to see you. Give my love to Mindy.
I will.
On deck is me. I'm going to read a poem. After Chris Jarmick, former LA-based producer, screenwriter Christopher J. Jarmick relocated to the Pacific Northwest in 1994. He's curated readings and special events for over 20 years. Since 2016, he's owned and managed Booktree Kirkland, Washington's only independent bookstore. His latest collection of poetry is Not Allowed, 2015 Moonpath Press. Jack's books are also available at Booktree Kirkland. Folks, please welcome Chris Jarmick.
Christopher Jarmick.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be part of this. And of course, Jack was a dear, dear friend, as he was to most of us here. And I wrote this piece and was so glad that it's part of the book. Drunks in a Wine Bar for Jack McCarthy. My Jack story involves one of Jack's best known and beloved poems, Drunks. He wrote the first version in 1992 and was amazed when he first did an internet search in 2000 that it had been shared on dozens of sites, credited to Jack McC in order to keep his AA participation fairly anonymous per the rules. Thankfully, you can find him reciting the poem on at least 2 YouTube videos. It remains a powerful, honest, and unforgettable poem. My friendship with Jack grew during the 10 years I knew him. I organized one of the last public readings Jack gave in November of 2012. He had known for several months that his health was declining, but he wanted to continue to do public readings for as long as it was possible. Finally, finding the strength to continue to do public readings was important to Jack, and he told me that he felt a burst of energy for several days after he performed for an audience. How long he could continue with public performances was a definite concern as we made plans in October, asking several poet friends of Jack's to be part of the reading at a unique venue, a wine store and bar in Kirkland, Washington, called Grape Choice. I think Karen and Jody were both there. Penny, one of the owners, was looking forward to having a reading featuring Jack McCarthy. Jack knew it would be one of his last performances, and I encouraged him to read Drunks as part of the performance. It would be perfect to read it in a bar. He loved the idea, but it was also important to him to make sure that Penny wouldn't be offended if he read the poem. I wasn't sure what Penny's reaction would be and debated about asking her permission at all. And then a few weeks prior to the event, Jack sent me an email. Dear Chris, before we moved to Seattle, I used to attend a Saturday morning AA meeting in Lake Stevens. I had some good friends in that group, but it's an 8:30 a.m. meeting, and as things got tougher, I found myself having to get up at 5:30. And at that point, I said my goodbyes. The group is having its annual potluck on 4 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon in a couple of weeks, and they've invited me back. I'd like to do it, but I'm already committed to Grape Choice, a commitment I have no intention of compromising. So a couple of members of the group have come up with a compromise of their own. They figure they can leave the potluck by 6:15 and make it to Grape Choice in time for the show. That sounds fine to me, but A, will Grape Choice have anything at all to serve people who don't drink alcohol? And B, does Grape Choice want an influx of poetry enthusiasts who aren't spending any money? It would be an awkward situation. or it could be an awkward situation. Could you run it by your contact? Your thoughts, please, Jack. I spoke to Penny about the situation and Jack's intention to read the poem Drunks as well. She had no problem with the request and arranged to have a large table reserved for Jack's guests and made sure there would be non-alcoholic options available to them. The event turned out to be very successful, of course, and Drunks received a standing ovation that temporarily overwhelmed Jack. Jack was able to perform a couple more times and dedicated himself to finishing his pet project, the editing of the book Drunks and Other Poems of Recovery, which was published posthumously a few months after he left us. Now, like a second encore, we are lucky there is more of Jack to share. Enjoy and be good to yourself. Grace and Jack McCarthy are synonymous. He wrote of it often. He has a few books and several poems with Grace in the title. And there is also hope in most of Jack's poems, like this one. This Side of Inevitable. She said, "You've been carrying everybody else your whole life. It's time somebody carried you. 35 years of paycheck to paycheck, like Eliza hopping across the Ohio on the ice floes, just praying that the next little island of solvency will come sluicing by before the rent is due, because once you're homeless, all bets are off. You do the best you can, but there are so many chinks in your armor that you know that sooner or somewhat less soon, the sword of happenstance is going to catch you in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's just this side of inevitable. It's time that's your enemy." Two different companies let me take time management courses, and both courses started by asking us to write down where we wanted to be a year from now. And both times I wrote, "Here. I just want to hold it together one more year." And both times I got laid off before the year. She said, "You've been carrying everybody else your whole life. It's time somebody carried you." And she went back to teaching. The high-tech bubble went bust, and there were layoffs in the air. So when they offered me a severance, I clutched it the way a coyote grabs that little branch that's halfway down the cliff. For once, I played my cards right, because for once, I wasn't playing with the rent money. Somebody had my back. And when I ponder the monumental unlikelihood of our ever having even crossed paths, long shot isn't strong enough. The only word that comes to mind is miracle. So this is for all you guys wondering how you're gonna hold it together one more year. And all you single mothers thinking, put something away for retirement. It's all I can do to keep up with college loans, the 29.5% usury on my maxed out credit cards. And there's never enough food in the house the day before payday, never. Springsteen sings, "These jobs are going, boy, and they ain't coming back." And you've always had an ear for prophecy. I know how scared you are. There are no safety nets anymore, no families to fall back on. We go where we think the work is, and we don't burn our bridges exactly, but the infrastructure of our lives is so decrepit, there's no going back, not even ice floes. You see your future as a huge volcanic crag you have to climb, knowing you can't afford to miss a single handhold, knowing that if your life were a sports event, Las Vegas would have taken you off the board a long time, since knowing it would be easier just to let go. But now you have people who depend on you. Don't let go. I know there are way too many homeless people on the street, but it's like Scott Peck said, too many people get killed in car crashes, but not nearly as many as the odds would seem to dictate. He calls that last chapter grace. You're gonna make it. Most people do, in spite of the odds. She said, "You've been carrying everybody else your whole life. It's time somebody carried you." I call my last chapter Miracles. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for asking me to be part of this project. And to all those who made this wonderful new book happen. You know Jack is very pleased. Miracle, indeed.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank
Yep.
you.
That was lovely. That was really lovely.
Mhm.
Now I know that you had asked about reading something else. So once we get through the full rotation, we'll circle back to you. Okay, folks on deck. Now I accidentally skipped Duncan's second piece. He was going to read a second piece as well. And so I'm going to read my piece, and then I'm going to call Duncan up. So Duncan, you're on deck. But right now, it is my pleasure to read a poem that Jack wrote about my kitchen. It's called My Back Pages. So I'm sitting in Mike McGee's kitchen on a rainy night, having found my way in spite of bad MapQuest directions that sent me through Kelly Square at drive time. And trust me, Kelly Square, Worcester's where directions go to die. Rainy night, drive time, or no. I'm here because Mike has started a series called The Kitchen Sessions, because, no brainer, he holds them in the kitchen of his little apartment, which by virtue of not having a table does have space for a dozen or so folding chairs. And being the third floor of an old New England house, alcove, standing room in several directions, not counting the unisex bathroom, which instead of a door has just a folding screen that doesn't really close. And the place is packed, not because I'm the featured reader, but because the kitchen is Mike McGee's kitchen. And anyway, it doesn't take all that many people to pack it, and they're all young. If there are 30 people there, maybe 2 of them have made it to half my age. Not naming any names, you know who you are. And most of the rest are under 30 and beautiful. Not in the sense that the capital B, capital P's have jetted in from north, south, east, west for poetry in Worcester, Massachusetts on a Friday night. No. What I'm doing with that word beautiful is putting myself squarely on the side of the woman who said the young have no idea how beautiful they are. The way Mike runs this thing, it starts with 7 or 8 readers from the audience, signed up mostly in advance, and all reading work that's never been heard before, anywhere. And while Mike is introducing this more or less open mic, he encourages them to keep it short because Jack isn't getting any younger. Everyone laughs, including Jack, because it is funny. Humor is based on incongruity, unexpectedness. 50 years ago in college, Jack had a friend, funny guy, good writer, who held that all humor is based on incongruous juxtaposition. And there's something very incongruous about juxtaposing this lined and seamed and stooped old man and all these beautiful young people, something forever unexpected. No matter how many times you watch it unfold, in the way they listen to him, the old do not expect the young to listen. He thinks about how this happened, about the man he was before. He learned that he could do this, that this listening existed, was out there waiting for him. That man was a good man, or at least tried very hard to be. Maybe it's the same. But he had already begun to feel the irreversible slow contraction that tends toward only one terminus. That man wanted for nothing, having given up on so much. Dylan, I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. So thank you, Mike, for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure to stand in your kitchen and read to your beautiful young audience. But you were wrong about that one thing. Jack is getting younger, all the time, younger. Jack draws energy from the beautiful young, not, I hope, parasitically, but symbiotically, each providing stuff the other needs. Maybe what Jack draws from the osmosis is an attitude adjustment in the direction of their not always correct assumptions, that there's plenty of time. Not everything has been decided. Not every possibility has been exhausted. What do they get from Jack? Something tells me that the day Jack thinks he can answer that will be the day he finally fucks up. Jack McCarthy, folks. I tell you, it felt like a coup getting Jack to come and perform in my kitchen. I felt like, holy shit, he said yes. You know, like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I liked Jack and we got along very well by that point. I think this was 2010, 2009, 2010. No, 2009, October. So this is about 11 years ago. And I remember thinking like, I can't believe this guy is going to grace us with his presence in my kitchen, in my tiny little compact, humid kitchen. And he was wonderful. He was a perfect featured poet. Perfect, absolutely, without a doubt. And there are all kinds of different perfects, but his was something that really changed me, you know. And I've been sober for I'd say going on about 6.5 years now, and a lot of that. And I quit smoking a couple years before he passed as well. And I remember being really, I felt really bad because we had done a gig at Carol's school, and we got into his car afterward, and he took me to Sherry's Diner in Washington. And we were on our way, we'd left, and we'd been at the school for a couple of hours, and I really wanted a cigarette. And I asked Jack, I said, Jack, actually, do you mind? We were like pulling out of the parking lot, and we pulled over somewhere so I could have a cigarette because I wanted one so badly. And I felt bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry to ask you to do this. He goes, Mike, it's okay. I know how it is. Trust me. And I go, I feel really guilty because I stood outside of the car smoking a cigarette, looking at him through the passenger window as he just sat at the wheel waiting for me to finish my cigarette. And I go, I feel horrible. I really shouldn't have done that. He goes, no, I really enjoyed watching you smoke it. Better you than me. So Jack was definitely, he was like, I like to think of him I used to call him on Father's Day. Instead of my dad, I would call him. And it was always nice to hear his voice. He always seemed surprised by the fact that I would call him. But I didn't think of him as a father figure. I thought of him more as like a much older brother, like a grandbrother, you know, like he wasn't really a grandfather or a dad or an uncle. He was like a big brother, but a very wise older brother. And so I miss him very much. And I know we all do. So moving along, folks. Thanks for listening. On deck is Karen Finneyfrock, but please welcome once again, Duncan Shields.
Thank you, Mike. That was beautiful. Man, I miss those kitchen sessions. I went to a few down in Bellingham there, and they're very, very treasured memories. This is one more poem that I found very, very short and just really, really moved me. A lot of his poems talk about both the miracle of love and the commonplace nature of love, the banality of love. It's everywhere. It was always like, if you lose, there's always tomorrow. A lot of the poems seem to have this through line from them of like, defeat is never permanent, you know, and that there's always another try. You know, it's never the end until it's the end. And I really appreciate that. But also this thing about, yeah, it's a miracle. Yeah, love is a miracle, but it's also everywhere. So this is a poem called Even Though. We were sitting in our armchairs, feet up, blankets over legs, watching a DVR on TV. And when it ended, I deleted it. The cable box defaulted to Americana music. John Fogerty singing, "Don't You Wish It Was True?" And simultaneously, Carol's toes and mine started tapping. Well, not really tapping. There was nothing to actually tap against, just wiggling the blankets. Carol noticed the synchronism before I did and said, "This is how old people dance." And we both laughed. Even though it wasn't the least bit funny, we had a good laugh. Both of us together. That's it. It's those little moments, you know.
Truly. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you.
Duncan, I think I might have you narrate like my life, like, and then he went to the fridge, got chubbier. You know?
A ham sandwich, he thought to himself.
Yeah. Strange for a vegetarian. Yeah. I adore you, buddy. I adore you. Duncan has Duncan. What's the name of your book again?
I just put a
short
small
sci-fi.
short science fiction stories. It's called Small Windows. Yeah,
It's fantastic.
That came out at the beginning of the year.
Is a very, very fantastic book. Can you put a link to it so that people can find it in the chat? That would be great. I highly recommend it. Oh, look at that. RC has one in his hand. I could go into my living room. It's on my shelf in my living room. I could go grab mine, but no, I won't because I'm chubby. All right. Let's see. So like I said, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I am so excited. Folks, Karen Finney-Frock is a poet and novelist in Seattle, Washington. She's the author of 2 young adult novels, The Sweet Revenge of Celia Dore and Starbird Murphy and the World Outside, both published by Viking Children's Books. She is one of the editors of the anthology Courage, Daring Poems for Gutsy Girls, and the author of Ceremony for the Choking Ghost, both released on Right Bloody Publishing. She is a former writer-in-residence at Richard Hugo House in Seattle and teaches for Seattle Arts and Lectures, Writers in the Schools program. In 2010, Karen traveled to Nepal as a cultural envoy through the U.S. Department of State to perform and teach poetry. And in 2011, she did a reading tour in Germany sponsored by the U.S. Embassy. I'm sure there's much more that happened after 2011. I don't have any more information. I've never met her before. I don't even know who she is. But I'm so excited to see her fantastic face. Holy shit. The KF, the one and only. I mean, everybody in the community has always referred to her as K-Frey, right? That's what we've always done ever since since like 1954, I think, is when we started doing that. It's wild. It's just wild. I have been a huge fan of Karen Finney-Frock since I think 2001. When I first went to the National Poetry Slam in Seattle. My first poetry slam, it was a great event. I had a good time, but it was one of the loneliest times in my life because I was like 25 and like figured I would never have like a partner, you know? And so it was just like, Seattle is not the place to like dig into, you know, being lonely. But meeting people like Karen Finney-Frock, who in my world is a legend. And I am so excited that she's here, and it's so good to see you. Folks, please give a huge warm welcome to Karen Finney-Frock.
What a lovely welcome, Mike. Thank you. Gosh, I'm just full of emotion tonight, hearing these poems, thinking about Jack, seeing all your faces, the feeling of being so isolated and then so together. I loved Jack. I was running the Seattle Poetry Slam when Jack moved to Seattle. I was already a fan of his before he came. And as so many of you have expressed, I had this feeling when Jack would read that I was receiving some type of wisdom that would be important for my life and wisdom that I needed to file away to call upon later. So we had a little event here in Seattle, as many slams do. We had an annual haiku slam. We called ours the Haiku d'Etat. And more than once, this slam would winnow down until it was me facing off against Jack McCarthy in the final round. And so there was one year where, Mike, I was experiencing some real loneliness. I was single and I didn't want to be, and I'd been that way a while and was really pretty deeply questioning what was going on. And so in that final round, I was reading haiku against Jack, and whether he had come with this haiku prepared or had made it up in the moment, I don't know, but he performed a little poem called Karen Finney-Frock Haiku. Men want to flirt with Karen after the slam, but they can't reach her. She's too aloof. I spent the next week asking everyone who would listen am I aloof? Is that what's wrong with my dating life? Am I unreachable? Why is this person who shares such wisdom with me telling me this important thing about myself and doing it so publicly in front of everyone else? And so finally, the next time I saw Jack, I was like, I felt kind of embarrassed asking you this, but like, do you think I'm aloof? And he was like, oh no, I just wanted to throw you off your game so I could win the slam. Point being, wise and a competitor, that Jack McCarthy. So I'm really pleased to read this beautiful poem to you tonight by Jack. It's called Thing About Hawks. And it was a beautiful choice to end the collection, I think. Thing About Hawks. It was one of those brilliant, crystalline January days that can be so cold. The kind of day when you see hawks sitting in trees along the Mass Pike, facing into the sun. I was driving my daughter Kathleen back to college, and from time to time I would point out to her the kind of tree I thought a hawk might like to sit in. After 3 or 4 trees, she asked, "What is this thing about hawks? Do you think you were a hawk in a previous life or something?" I smiled and said, "Perhaps," and talked no more of hawks. But on the long ride home alone, I decided she was almost right, that I'll come back as a hawk, and maybe someday, as I drift upon an updraft, the top of your blonde head will catch my eye. Maybe as you jog along a country road, Kathleen, and my hawk heart will pump a simple, unfamiliar signal. Not kill and eat, although there's something in it like my feeling for the prey, that it was good to kill and good to eat, but that's over now. Not sleep, because the sun's still high, but there is something in it that is like sleep. Not mate, because it's not that time. There is no other hawk in sight. Not feed your young, because I have no young to feed yet. There is something in it about mating, about young. Not fly great distances across the path of the sun, because I'm where I'm at till I get cold. Still, there is something of great distances about it. Not play at aerobatics with a raven, although there is something in it about with. Requiring no action, the impulse will be gone as quickly as it came. And being a hawk, I'll never think of it again. A shadow passing on the edge of consciousness might nudge you to glance up. And squinting in the sun, you'll see me, dark and sharp, immobile. Here's tips. Any remembering will be done by you.
Thank you, Karen. Karen, can I ask you a favor? You froze for a moment there. Would you mind reading the last maybe 6 lines over one more time so we can hear them all? I think you froze for a moment there.
Yeah, I was wondering if that happened. Let's rewind a bit.
Yeah.
A shadow passing on the edge of consciousness might nudge you to glance up. And squinting into the sun, you'll see me, dark and sharp, motionless, but exquisitely mobile, sliding sideways down the bright blue sky, your young blue eyes discerning separation of the feathers in my wingtips. Any remembering will be done by you.
Oh.
Woo! My goodness.
One of the best in the book. Thank you, Karen.
Agreed.
Yeah, truly.
Oh my gosh.
Truly. I'm so glad you picked that piece, Karen. It's you were the absolute right person to read that. And thank you for reading that last part again. I do appreciate it. I don't want to keep people too much longer. I'd like to ask Chris Jarmick if he's ready to read his piece.
Absolutely. I will jump into it really quick here. When I was preparing some things to do it, I remembered I did this poem for Jack, and Legine, my wonderful partner, she said, "Oh, you've got to read it, especially since everybody there will really appreciate it." So, okay. Why? For Jack McCarthy. In his memory, hold the hand of fallen acquaintance, spouse, daughter, son, friend, drunk, addict. Help them to their feet. Look them in their eyes. Remind them there is help. Even when they don't believe they can be forgiven, tell them there is hope, that love exists. They are human. They matter. And most important, there is light. The darkness tells us so. The opposite of love is doubt. Our enemy is fear. Everyone falls. Everyone hurts. Everyone forgets. You only need to imagine you can dance, and the music gets louder. You only need to listen, and the words you need to hear will be there. Today, you won't believe it, but your worst fears will make you laugh tomorrow. Some of you gifted with grace carry on the powerful message. All we share are these brief moments in time. If they are dark, soon comes the light. If they are bright, reach out for the hand of another. Pull them out of their shadows. Tell them the whole truth. If they're listening, this is what they need to hear. If they aren't, perhaps the next time, perhaps the next messenger will be the one to simply remind them that all of us, the addicts and the normies, all do life one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very, very much for all of you. It's wonderful to see all of you, and especially the ones that I know, and meeting some of the ones that I don't know. And Mike, this is wonderful. It's wow.
Thank you, Chris. I know I did a great job. I really did. Yeah, no, this is fun. This is, like I'm a chubby.
I'm writing
homebody.
out a check
This is
to you,
easy.
Mike. How much should I write the check out to you for?
33 cents. 33 cents. So here's what I'm going to do, folks. In the chat right now is the link for tomorrow's event. If you would like to attend, that's the link. Just click on it. Save it, copy it, and hang on to it. And then tomorrow at 7 p.m., we're going to be doing the California edition of the book launch. If you're up for joining us, we'd love to have you. I would like to ask Wes Mongo Jolly a favor, if he would. Wes, would you mind telling everyone about Dartmouth and Jack's personal effects and papers? Tell the story.
I don't know. Is Carol still here? Is she?
Yeah, Carol's still here.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Carol. Carol is responsible for.
Hi, Wes.
Hi, Carol. Carol is responsible for working with Dartmouth College.
Hi.
Brought all of Jack's papers into their special collections library, the Rauner Special Collections Library at Dartmouth College. So Jack's collection is now of all of his letters and poems and notes and who knows what else is there, but it's all now being preserved by the Special Collections Library. And one thing I wrote about in my essay in the book is that the fact that Jack has his collection at Dartmouth College, where I coincidentally happened to work for 22 years as the records manager and didn't even know until fairly late in that term that Jack and I shared that in common. But because Jack has started Dartmouth College down the road of collecting a slam poetry, the papers of a slam poet, they were open to collecting something, the collection that I had been building, which is called the Performance Poetry Preservation Project, which is tens of thousands of recordings and books and slam chapbooks and everything. And because Jack's collection was there, they were willing and interested in taking on and broadening their slam holdings by bringing that collection into their holdings as well. So Jack has really opened up a really wonderful new permanent historical archive of the slam poetry world. So in a way, he is, it is through him that this community is going to get a level of historical and long-term preservation that it probably would have never gotten before. So that's a very short version of that story.
I think it's. Thank you, Wes. I do appreciate you telling that story, and I think it's safe to say that Carol and Jack McCarthy were both pivotal and catalysts in making sure that spoken word and poetry slam content would be available to the public for generations to come. And Carol, I appreciate it, and I think I can speak for at least 6 other people that I know of who would be glad to, would love to thank you personally for everything that you've done.
Can I say one thing? One thing?
No, definitely not. Yes, of course.
No, just one thing.
Yes.
Dartmouth is so proud of Jack, and they feel that he is a leading figure in the contemporary poetry world, and that they have this documentation in their library, and Wes Mongo's means the world to them.
Mm.
So it makes me want to cry, because Jack would be so happy to know that.
Yeah, it's a long-term gift that he's given to the whole community. It's even after he's gone, he keeps giving gifts to his community.
Well, you've given a lot of gifts too, Wes Mongo Jolly. I adore you, and I could sing your praises all day. Honestly, I honestly could. You also are like an older brother, and it's funny though, because we've only actually met in person once.
I was thinking that's true at one time, but we've certainly spoken a lot through through the years and other mediums.
It got to the point where Mongo. So I got an email from Taylor Molly saying there's this guy who's starting up a poetry podcast, which was a new term that I was not familiar with. It was, I think, 2006. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it was like January, February 2006. And Taylor Molly said, if you send him a poem, an MP3, he'll put it on his show. And so it was like, I think the first person you played was it, oh gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Howell. What's his face?
Ginsberg?
Ginsberg? Was it Ginsberg?
He wasn't one of the first, but he was eventually. But I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember who my first one was. It's been too long.
I know that it was a pretty notable poet, but you also had like Taylor. I think you had Mark Smith. You had a bunch of folks on there. And I was like episode 9, and I thought, oh, that's cool. Well, 1,600 episodes later, he had me on like 20 times, but it got to the point where like the 5th time he had asked me for a poem, I just ended up sending him a CD with like 100 MP3s on it. I said, you pick, I'm done.
Yeah.
So
Jack did the exact same thing. He sent me Breaking Down Outside a Gas Station, and said just go for it. And I ended up featuring so many of his poems from that album. Oh, yeah. It was really a joy.
And I have to say that you've all really, everyone here, including everyone just watching and listening, we've done something really wonderful tonight. We've banded together to share in a person that really had an impact on us. That really had a really marvelous grasp. Like he held our hand in a way that was like, well, you lead me and I'll lead you, and we'll figure this out. And I think that's one of the reasons we miss him so much, but I think that the best thing we can do is I kind of have this thing with where in my head for the last several years, I think WWJD, what would Jack do? And whenever I'm stuck, whenever I'm at a point, I usually do the WWJMD so that no one gets confused. But I will say that, I don't know what he would necessarily do, but I like to think that if I do it right, he'd be happy. That he'd be happy with my choices. He'd be happy with my decisions. But I want to say that we are all here. We are all present. We are all alive, and we're in a very strange time. And so I make this offer to you again. I'm here. some of us are here. And if you need a thing, if you need an ear or what have you, let me know, and I will do everything I can to listen and to be present. It's very important to me that you are all heard and appreciated. And I am so glad I got a chance to hear all of you tonight and to appreciate your faces and your words. My email address is mightymikemcgee@gmail.com. If you would like to attend, we have the open mic on Saturday night. Derek Brown, would you like to say anything? Are you still here? Derek Brown, D-Bags, D Brown. I could write a jingle for it. Anyone, anybody, you name it. $10. I don't know if Derek's around, if he can hear me, but I would say that the most important thing that we can do is be good, be gentle with ourselves, and let's get this book out there. Let's show people this really beautiful tome, this really beautiful, wonderful guide to so many things. And again, a huge thank you to Jessica Lohafer for the work, because you folks, you got to understand, like this book. Look at this. When you hold it in your hand, it is so tangible. It's so big, and there's so much to it. And that was all thanks to Jessica, because otherwise, knowing Derek, he just would have slapped everything together, and that book would be 850 pages. So I want to thank Jessica for cutting the fat, because Jack had so many poems about all nude burlesque, and that's just not the theme we were going for, So, folks, that's it. If you want to go, now's a good time for you to go. I'm going to stay on the horn until every last person is gone. If you want to stick around and chat, by all means, let's, you know what? As a matter of fact, I'm going to unmute everyone. And we're all going to just give ourselves a nice round of applause.
Yay.
A really beautiful evening. I'm proud of all of you. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves.
Good night, everybody. It's really late.
Thank you.
Thanks
all.
Everybody, great to see everybody.
Bye.
Great to see you, Carol.
Thank you, Jessica. Mwah.
Thank you.
Nice to see you,
Hey,
Kathy
Carol.
Crying Hicks.
Hi, Carol.
Oh, I'm
Good to
so
see you.
glad to see you.
Oh, when this crazy
There you are.
time gets better, I might be out in Portland to see my daughter and my grandchild.
See you there.
Okay, I'll give you a
Oh.
call. I hope it isn't too much longer.
All right. All right.
Oh, it's great to see you.
I love you.
I've got to get up
And
in
Jack
a couple
loved you.
hours. So, love you all. Thank you.
Oh, you're still the same. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Carol.
Jody, you look so beautiful.
Oh, I love
And
you.
Chris and everybody.
I'll call you.
Oh my goodness. I have goosebumps. Okay. And Ryler. Bye.
Bye, Carol.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you. Love you, Carol.
Bye.
Bye, you guys. I'm going.
Love you guys.
Bye, Jody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Love you, Jody.
Love
See you,
you.
Jody.
Bye.
Up in that group, huh?
Hey, you guys. Thank you for everything. I love you.
RC, I love you so much.
Love you too, buddy.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Jenny
Call me.
Park, I love you.
Love you back.
Vinny Brock, what have you been up to?
Ooh, just in my house doing a lot of this.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah,
of
you're looking at it.
mine. Yeah.
Okay, so prior to COVID, what were you up to?
Getting married.
Did you get married? Are you married?
I sure am.
Aww.
Yeah.
I saw your lovely betrothed pop up behind you. It has been too long since I've seen either of you. As a matter of fact, I think the last time I saw you both together was, gosh, that had to have been whirlwind tour. Is that
Wow.
possible?
Wow.
Is that really possible?
Was that the night we all chanted Mama Say, Mama Sa, Mama Kusa
Yeah,
until
that was at the
long
diner.
after the song was over?
We used to
Yeah.
do that a lot. That was our thing.
Yeah, we had a lot of those. Freezing, Colin, Insenine Kielzo. All right. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm okay. I think the hardest part in all of this is just not being able to see family. Because they all moved about an hour away from here. All my sisters, my sisters and their spouses, my brother and his wife, they all bought houses out in Tracy, California, where like you can get a house for like $350,000. You know, yeah. So they all bought these big 4-bedroom houses, and they're all living out there. And it's the summertime. It's like constantly 104 degrees. You know, but they love it. You know, it's quiet. It's chill. I live near City Hall in downtown San Jose, which is it's become a ghost town again. When I first moved downtown, it was a really really quiet place, really strangely quiet for a downtown in a major city. It was nothing. It was really nothing to look at, nothing to write home about. But over the years, it's become a pretty cool place. And so for the last, I moved back here from Bellingham in 2014. And the goal was become poet laureate of Santa Clara County and run a bunch of shows. And I did all that. And then COVID hit, and I was like, oh, maybe I should just slow down and take a little break. And, you know, I was like, instead of touring around the country, I stopped and I decided to tour my county, you know, and just like get involved with, you know, some political stuff and, you know, and definitely a few protests here and there, you know, and a lot of workshops, working with kids, working with youth, and just being a San Jose guy, being a Silicon Valley guy as best as possible. Just show folks like, yo, you don't have to just go into tech. You could also be poor with me and be a poet, you know? Let's be poor. Like the median income in Santa Clara County, or it might be San Jose, is $102,000. That's the median household income. We are the richest city in the country. It is because it's all tech. You know, I live miles from Google, miles from Apple, miles from Adobe, miles from Yahoo, I said Yahoo. It's like the oldest thing in the world. I might as well have just said, and I live like Friendster is across the street. You know?
And America Online is just right next to you.
Yeah. Ask Jeeves. He lives right next door. It's crazy. I just knocked. I was like, hey, Jeeves, I was wondering, what year was Keanu Reeves born? Like, God damn it, man. I'm retired. Didn't you know?
Well, it sure is nice to see your face. I thought it was so nice the way you kept inviting people to call you. That's just such a generous and, you know, friendly offer to make.
I got so tired of my cell phone, and so I bought a voiceover internet, a VoIP phone, which is like it's a home phone. It's essentially just a landline, but you plug it into your modem, and whether your cell phone is on or not through my service, it was free. I just had to buy a phone and connect it to this special box. And now my home phone rings, and it's the weirdest, cool. It's so 1997, you know? And so I answer, you know, like if you call my cell phone, I can answer either my cell or my home phone. And it's so nice. And so what I've been doing throughout COVID has been like, friends will call, and then I'll just lay on my bed and chat with them for like 2 hours, and I'll just like gab, you know, like, oh, what'd you do today? I did nothing. I watched 5 episodes of Schitt's Creek, and I ate all the Cheez-Its, you know. Like, I did nothing, you know, and that's the best. I feel like that's the best thing I could do. Like that was the thing I had to really own at the beginning of all this, was like, okay, you know, like, because I was so like, my Google Calendar was the most important tool I had, because if you had contacted me and said, hey, can we have a phone meeting on Wednesday the 26th, first thing I would do is look on my computer and see, like, do I have time on the 26th, you know? And that was my life for the last 5-6 years, was like just so busy, so crazy busy. And COVID obliterated that busyness, you know? And it's actually probably saved my life, honestly. It's wild how much crap I was getting myself into. Good stuff, all good stuff, you know? But I realized, like, that's kind of the beauty of it, is that once you do all that, you know, like, no one's going to blame me for not doing a whole lot during this time, because no one's doing a whole lot, you know? So it's been nice. Again, it's just like not touching people. So I started doing this thing where, like, I'll cover my hand, like, just saturated with sanitizer, so that I can give people nuts, you know? So I can just, like, boom, you know, whenever they come over.
One just slips right off.
Yeah, boom. Your coronavirus ain't gonna touch me, bro. So, but yeah, so I have an online talk show that I do first and third Saturdays on Zoom. It's not on Zoom. Sorry, it's on Facebook Live. It's called The Mighty Late Show, and it used to be. It's the only live show that I used to do pre-COVID that has transferred over to the internet. So, and that's fun. And so basically what we've been doing for the last couple episodes is just going over the California state ballot, and telling people, like, yo, maybe consider this. Here's how we interpret Measure F, you know, that sort of thing. And then, I realized, like, the thing that has helped me stay positive and happy is communicating with folks, you know, being a better communicator and being present and available. So that's why I like giving out my number and my email, because I figure, you know, like, I'm going to be dead one day, you know, and, you know, I don't want anyone to ever think, like, oh, wow, I really missed a chance to connect with Mike because he never gave me his fucking number, you know? So, and I want to know how people are doing. Granted, if there had been like 2 or 3 more people that I didn't know that well, I might not have said that, you know? But it was really like a Zoom grid of, like, people I adore, you know? That makes it real easy, you know? So, but yeah, it was funny too to, like,
collection tonight.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
This is a nice moment too, because it reminds me of, like, you know, after the show's over,
Yeah.
and the poets are hanging out in the back room.
Yeah.
Deciding what's next.
Yeah, it's pretty
We're all
great.
gonna get some coffee, you guys. Where do you want to go?
I know. Gosh, I would give anything right now. I would pay $300 to show up at a diner where you two were sitting, and your spouses, you know, and I'd bring my cat, who I can't legally marry, but, you know, whatever. And sit and gab, you know, and the sad thing is I'm gonna now be up till like 2 a.m, 3 a.m, because I have been drinking coffee this whole time. So, like a jackass. I'm done. Like, I think I finished it.
Brian Ellis, Joe and I got married in Cape Cod. I thought of you many times.
I like saw that, and I loved it. Like, first of all, perfect. No notes, don't change a thing. Also super jealous. I mean, like, angry jealous. You know. Was it Wellfleet?
It was the Daniel Webster Inn in Sandwich.
Oh my God.
Sandwich.
Sandwich,
Yeah.
Mass.
Yeah.
That's so great.
That's beautiful. I know. Yeah, I know the Daniel Webster in the Sandwich. I mean, Sandwich is one of those towns where you're like, everyone born and raised there is a piece of shit. You know.
Yeah.
But it's a great place to get married. That's awesome.
In April, my dear friend David Perez, also, you know, Right Bloody author, and poet laureate prior to me, he he got married in April. Like COVID had hit, and he and his partner Jen had planned to get married on April 4th, and I was supposed to officiate. It was my 16th wedding, and they had a plan. It was going to be in Big Basin, which now doesn't really exist. The number of the trees have been obliterated thanks to the California fires. And it's just a weird, it's almost like 2020 is just sort of erasing so much of the past. But we ended up some friends of ours. I think you've both met Lucia Mish. She's a dear friend. She was a student of mine and David's way back when she was like 15 when we met her initially. And we've stayed friends with her parents here in San Jose. And Lucia will actually be in the program tomorrow night for Jack. I wrangled her because we had so many readers for this one, and we had no one was biting for tomorrow night's event. And so I was like, Lucia, I know you're in Vancouver, but I need you for California because you are OG California. Anyhow, Lucia's parents offered their backyard, which is it's been mine and David's and Jen's favorite place to just relax and get away from everything. They have this lovely backyard full of plants and a little screened summer house, and it's just lovely. And there's me, David and Jen, Lucia's parents, Victoria and Tony, and Dave's sister, Ariana, who took photos. So, I mean, it was the smallest wedding I've ever been to in my life, and it was beautiful. It was lovely. And I biked there. I had to bike there because I couldn't get in a car with anyone.
Right.
I had to bike over to their house, which is like 3 miles from here, and not touch anyone, and not, and we drank coffee and kept, like, it was the first time I'd been out and had to social distance with human beings. Yeah. But it was before masks, because this was like early April, and the government was still saying like don't save masks, save them for the essential workers, save them for the front line. You don't need a mask because it's because that's stupid, And it's just like, oh gosh, 2020 hindsight. Yeah.
Well, Joe and I were hatching a plan for Brian and Mindy to come live in our house once they had to run north from the fires.
Yeah, we haven't talked, Karen, but thank you. Because one, I was like literally relieved when Mindy told me. She was like, Karen and Joe said we could come, and I was like, it was a huge weight off my mind, and it was scary. I mean, where Mindy and I live is close to the county line, like the Multnomah Clackamas County line, and Clackamas County was evacuating. Like, we were a couple miles from the line where, they were telling you to start packing because you need to go soon. And it was bad. And, the skies were red, there was no light, the sun didn't come out for like 10 days, and people in Portland put like filters on window fans and just ran them in their house, and the filters would clog up, would turn completely gray with, and the other wild thing that everyone's talking about is that so many of us in Portland purchased gas masks because of the police. I purchased this like high-tech gas mask to go protest. I mean, I have like goggles and a helmet. I have a large wooden shield, because you need those things if you want to protest in Portland these days. Yeah. And so we were all like, oh, so this like terrible smoke has descended, but we also have this high-tech breathing gear. So
thank goodness.
Yeah.
So strange.
But and it was funny, the people that reached out when the fires were happening, it was like you and Joe reached out, and Max Kessler called me to check on me because he's just a good dude. And then like 2 weeks later, I mean, the skies had cleared, everything was over, and my parents called, and they were like, are you okay? We heard about the fire. And I'm like, is it just hitting Fox News now? Is it like, is that the delay? Like, what?
Was that your dad who joined us, Brian?
What?
There was someone named Ellis. Who is that?
Unrelated. I don't know those
Oh!
guys.
I wondered that too.
I was like, the name was like Barnes Ellis. I was
Yeah,
like,
Barnes Ellis. And we didn't look that different.
No, not terribly different. You know, when you see two
Dad
people
was
and you're like,
believable.
that could be their cousin. That could be their mom, you
I
know.
have no idea who those guys were. Although there are a lot of Ellises in Snohomish, Washington. I feel like those might have been like Everett, Snohomish, Jack McCarthy dudes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I could see that. My grandfather used to live in Snohomish. Now he lives in, it's not far from there, but the whole McGee side of my family is all over Washington, all over, but not in the major cities. They're like Puyallup. They're in, you know, Enumclaw. You know, they don't venture into the cities because well, they don't care much for modernity, you know. So they're I had to like block one of my uncles because I was tired of like all of his Trump bullshit. So, yeah. I was gonna ask something. Oh, and I know Portland is gaining I don't know how much this is news, and Derek is on here somewhere, but Portland's gaining a Derek.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Derek and Lizzie, we had a Zoom meeting with me and Mindy just for them to tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not terribly public, but I think it's okay that we all know.
Yeah.
It's so great. I'm glad. I'm like, what the hell are you doing in Southern California? Like, I mean, I get it. He's from there, but it's like, I'm also from San Jose and I don't really have any business being here. You know, like San Jose is to art what bleach is to color, you know, and they just don't seem to get along for some reason. Yeah. I love this city. I love it. I came back here to try to, you know, bullhorn and beacon some poetry and some poets, but yeah, it's hitting your head against the wall, you know. But I'm glad. I think Derek, Lizzie, and Portland makes sense. That's
well, yeah, and Lizzie lived here. I don't know. She might even be from here originally, but she did live here a long time, and she was in like a really popular band called Radiation City that was like the queen of Portland rock and roll, you know. So Lizzie, you know, in Portland.
That makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
I don't think I've met her. I don't think I've met Lizzie yet.
Oh, she's painfully cool. I mean, like.
So are you.
Yeah.
So are you, Brian. I learned from you. I learned by watching you.
And she's also kind of like a female Anise, you know, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That boy, I tell you.
Yeah. Poet Laureate of Oregon.
Yeah, I know. Your laureate.
My laureate.
Your laureate. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's
Brian, what are you doing these days?
What's
Me?
that?
I said,
Brian.
Brian, what are you doing these days?
Well, I've been unemployed for many months now. I had been for a couple of years. I had been doing in-home behavioral therapy for children on the autism spectrum. What that meant is like for like 4 and 5-year-old boys on the spectrum, I would go into their house and show them flashcards and teach them to read and write and speak. But, you know, like COVID happened and actually my company like got essential worker status, you know, but a couple of the families I work with were like, sorry, Brian, we love you. Please stop coming into our house. You know, like, and then I was like, I'm not gonna start with new clients right now. I'm not gonna like introduce myself to new people, right now during this time. So and I also have been teaching a little bit on the side. I teach storytelling classes through Portland Community College. It's mostly like older folks, which is really great. But I teach them like sort of like The Moth, that type of oral storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe is unemployed because of COVID.
Yeah.
I know the feeling.
My older brother got married. He was supposed to get married in April, and I was the best man. And for a couple weeks, he and I were on the phone a lot. We were, tracking, COVID as it was blooming. And then I was like, you need to postpone this wedding. And he didn't want to, but eventually he did. He was like, all right, I'm going to postpone the wedding. And then I didn't think about it for a little while. And then he called me back like a month and a half later. And he was like, the wedding's been rescheduled for August. And I was like, August? Like, not like a year? You're not going to wait until,
August 2023 or?
Yeah.
Which August?
He was going to like lose his deposit on the venue. So he just, decided to go through with it. And I was like, wow, I don't want to do this, but I'm getting on a plane because I'm not going to miss your wedding. So I got on a plane and I didn't like it. I
could just picture you there with your helmet, your gas mask, your goggles.
Yeah. I mean, my wooden shield. Yeah. Yeah. And actually like the plane itself actually felt pretty safe because there was no one on the plane. The plane was empty, which was like kind of nice. But I flew from Portland to SeaTac, and SeaTac was full of people. And I was like, "What? Go home. What are you all doing? Like, what?
Why are you congregating?"
Yeah, and and you can't stand 6 feet apart in an airport like walking. Like it's not. And people still try to cut in line. Like that behavior doesn't end.
Right.
Just because people are eating hamburgers at the bar in the airport, like.
Right.
Yeah. And so I flew out to all my family lives in North Carolina now. They one by one, they all just moved there from New England. And so I flew out to North Carolina, and the wedding was sweet. It was a nice wedding. My brother Bruce, who's the middle brother, married my older brother's his girlfriend's daughter.
I need a chart.
Right.
Yeah.
I need a family tree.
Yeah, my eldest brother is dating a woman who has an adult daughter in her 30s, who my middle brother married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mom and my mom's youngest sister, my Aunt Lori, both married brothers, and it's weird because my cousin Daniel, Lori and Danielle's son, is more closely related genetically to my sisters than I am, because they have the same grandparents. They have the exact same grandparents, and that makes them genetically siblings, not cousins. They're legally cousins. They're genetically siblings.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you share the same 4 grandparents with someone, you need to stay away from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
You guys, I feel like that waitress isn't coming with our fries.
Son of a...
Really ignoring us. It's because we're too loud.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, and Mindy got her PhD, and that was crazy. That was a crazy, like month leading up to it. Like Mindy was like not together. I don't know. Mike, you've seen it once or twice, but like that moment, because usually Mindy's the one who has it together.
Yeah.
But there's those times when like Mindy doesn't have it, and it's it's all hands on deck.
Mindy in retrograde.
Exactly, Mindy retrograde. It's pretty wild.
I think post proto tour was the first time I'd noticed it.
Yeah.
The first jaunt.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so great though. It's funny to kind of look across all of the friends I've made over the years and just see like engineers, doctors, laureates, just it's like wow, we're old.
Yeah.
we're running certain things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since getting her PhD, she's just been super busy. She didn't intentionally set out to start a therapy practice, but she sees 15 people a week over Zoom. I mean, everyone.
Wow.
She's just everyone's in therapy. Everyone needs to talk. Everyone's losing their minds, and they're all talking to Mindy, and she's busier than she's ever been.
Yeah. I believe it. I have no.
Yeah.
I'm so proud. So amazing.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go get something to eat.
Okay.
Since that waitress isn't coming. I love you both, and I miss you both, and it's been a real treasure to get to connect. I would be down. I feel like it would be really cool. Robbie Q has been doing these workshops on Thursdays. Not every Thursday, I don't believe, but the occasional Thursday, and they're really fun. They're really fun workshops, and they start because he starts it at 8 p.m. Chicago time. They end up being earlier for us, which is lovely. If you are into that idea, I can send you the info for his workshops, because it's kind of a it is a workshop, but it's also a little bit of a gab fest too with folks. Shappy is at every single one of them, which is hilarious. So it's so great. Because then somebody will be like, well, I wrote this piece and it was about the time, and so I just want to let everyone know there's gonna be some pretty serious stuff. And then Shappy just comes in, he's like, so I'm fucking a Muppet, it's like, wow, you got that from that? That's cool. That's different. Wow. Yeah. But I think it'd be kind of neat. I don't know. I want to do something. I want to do I think maybe in the spring I might do, if we're still doing the Zoom thing, I might do a Jack McCarthy Invitational Slam on Zoom. Because I was doing them in Marysville after he passed away. I took it over, and but it got harder and harder for me to go up to Marysville for free once a year. No one. I mean, I don't know anyone from Seattle who wants to go to Marysville for free. So that says it all. And I have family there, so I have two reasons to avoid it. But yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to convince the two of you to get on Zoom with me and maybe some other friends and just gab, just do a little nighttime cafe or something.
Let's do it. That sounds perfect.
Yeah, love it.
Send me, give me a list of people we should reach out to and just have even if it's just once every other month, just how I like to call them check up from the neck up, and a check in from within and without. So, because it does me a lot of good, and I feel like it would be nice to just gab and shoot the shit. There's a lot of folks that I would love to see. What's that?
Inquire within.
Oh, yes.
Think about it. Think about it.
No, I already am.
Yeah.
It's already years, man. I got 2 hamsters and one never gets on the wheel, you know? And that way, as soon as you said that hamster perked up and both of them started running. So they're on. You must be onto something there. Okay. Oh, Ellis. Well, I love you both, and I will. I'll be in touch with some hangout ideas and times and days. What nights are good for you guys? Like if we were going to pick a night to gab, to chat, to.
The only really bad night for me is Wednesday because I teach.
Okay, cool. What do you teach? Where do you teach? What are you teaching?
So I teach for Hugo House, which is the Literary Arts Center in Seattle, and I do a year long. So I get a group of like 16 adults, and I teach them to write a novel for young adults or middle grade. And then I also do like a teen poetry circle that same night through Hugo House.
You know, it's funny. There's actually, I have a strange connection that I just discovered in Seattle that I was unfamiliar. I wasn't familiar with this venue, but there is. I gotta find it. But I wrote a poem at the beginning of the pandemic. I wrote a poem called "Widespread Orchestra," which is a phrase that I actually found. I got from a random phrase generator online, and I was like, "What a beautiful random phrase," you know. And I ended up writing this poem called "Widespread Orchestra," and it's about isolation and being alone, but knowing that there are others going through it too. And I posted it online, didn't think much of it. My buddy Noah, who is a composer and a beautiful musician, a wonderful musician here in San Jose, he said, "Oh my gosh, I love this poem. Can I do something with it?" And I said, "Sure, yeah, go for it." And then I didn't hear much about it. Then he contacted me a couple weeks later. He's like, "Hey, there's a cellist that I know. He's very famous. He loves this piece that I composed for your poem, and he wants to be a part of it." I was like, "Cool." Then I heard nothing until last week, right? So I hadn't heard anything since May. Noah emails me, texts me, and calls me last week. And he's like, "I need to get a hold of you because I got some news. I got some updates." So I call him back. I was like, "What's up?" He goes, it was kind of all quiet on the Western Front with that piece until about a month ago. And this cellist who runs a place called Town Hall Seattle. Are you familiar with that? Have you ever heard of that, Karen?
Yeah.
So you know about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this guy,
venue.
Yeah. What's his name? I mean, like, they're presenting something with Jane Fonda and Elizabeth Lesser. Like, they got all kinds of things going on. The guy's name is, it's coming up, Joshua Roman. Really phenomenal guy. Well, anyhow, they've turned this thing into a song, and Joshua Roman is playing cello on it, and they're getting all these vocalists from around the world to record the lyrics. So they've turned the poem into lyrics, and they're going to present it at Town Hall Seattle in November. And I was like, fuck, that's awesome. That's so cool. Like, I can't wait to hear it. Like, I was like, this rinky-dink little poem that I busted out for no good reason other than I had to get it out of my head has turned into this weird thing that other people care more about than I do. So that's always weird, you know.
Remind me when that's coming up.
I will. Oh yeah. As soon as I know, I'll blast it.
Cool.
Because that's just, well, I mean, it's, you know, it's like I don't feel like I really have anything to do with it other than the fact that, like, I came up with the words, but, like, you know, I mean, you both know how it is when you, yeah, but I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like, how many, like, I wrote that poem in like 7 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, it really was just like essentially a free write, you know?
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? I'm never going to edit this. This is one draft, you know, let me touch this up. Okay, it's done, you know? And then I just posted it, you know? I thought maybe people might like to read this. that's that. It's a throwaway, you know, like maybe it'll appear in a book someday, who knows, but you know, I didn't think much of it. But Noah, it's all Noah. He did it. And I mean, he's that kind of guy who like writes music on music sheets, you know. I'm like, I don't know that world at all. So I'm already impressed. I haven't heard any of it. I don't know anything about it other than what he's told me. And but I wanted to mention it to you because I was not familiar with Town Hall Seattle. So when I looked it up, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a very legit thing with a very legit cellist. So, but Joshua Roman has a residency through November at Town Hall Seattle. So I'm guessing there's all kinds of stuff going on there. And I know Ebo Barton just did something there too.
Yeah, that's where, I mean, we've had slams there, but also that's where like me and Derek and Buddy and some folks performed with the Seattle Rock Orchestra.
Wow. That's so cool.
Which was just a super fucking cool event.
Yeah. No kidding. I feel like, yeah, that's so amazing. I'm so impressed. Yeah. What do you guys have coming up? Anything going on that I should know about? That I can log into? No. Sitting in front of bookshelves and fireplaces.
Pretty much.
No.
Yeah. Mindy and I are teaching a workshop through Awful Good Writers. That's coming up.
That's where I got part of your bio from tonight.
Yeah, I didn't send you a bio.
It's all right.
I don't know. Also, don't know where that bio came from or who wrote it.
Probably Mindy.
Yeah.
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 It sounded more like.
What's that?
I think it might have been Derek.
Yeah, it's got a very Derek flourish to it, you know, just like oh, Brian is a jar of mustard inside of a world that's full of bats, and those bats are all named Ricky. And I'm like, what, dude? Did you take Shappy's workshop? What's going on? I like crafting people's bios. I really do. And like I felt bad because like while it was like, okay, so and so's coming up on deck, so I'm like surfing the web looking for bios to which is why I ended up reading yours from your website, Karen. But I figured, you know, it's like you wrote it, you put it up there, so you must be okay with it. You know. Yours, the one I was like, Brian is too, what's the word? Brian is too humble to have written that other bio that was on the Awful Good Writers.
My bio is like 2 sentences now. I'm like, yeah, Brian Ellis has published these number of books. He lives in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah. He likes burgers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a photo of you somewhere of you eating 2 very large hamburgers at Pointy House.
Well, and that was, I ate 4 actually.
Oh,
and
that's
I got
right.
sick. But that was just the last 2. It was such a bad idea. But it was such a I don't know. There was sometimes like living with a niece is like a sitcom. It's like, you know, it's like New Girl or something.
Yeah.
Where he's like, no way you can eat 4 cheeseburgers. And I'm like, I'm going to do it, dude.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like Anise is the kind of person who would sell everyone on like, hey, have you had a donut cheeseburger yet? You know, or it's like a donut cut in half, a glazed donut, and then like all the cheeseburger fixins, you know, and then everyone would start doing it. And then like somebody would say like, you know, hey, niece, let's go get some donut cheeseburgers. He's like, you're still doing that? Like, wow. Okay. Yeah. You go 2017, you know? Wow.
Okay.
All right, Chief. Okay, boss. Yeah. You're really nailing it.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. I think I need to go for a walk. I've been sitting on my butt all night.
Same. I got to get away from the screen, but I really would love to see you guys again. And Mike, I'm going to email you about getting invites to your open mic because that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And give my love to Mindy and to Mike.
I will.
Yeah. Give my love to Mindy and to Joe, and I love you both.
Love you both.
Bye, you guys.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.